porque me dejas. Bueno, mira, señora, ay señorita, nadie sabía lo que iba a pasar, solamente fuiste y me dejaste solito en la eternidad. Señora, ay señorita, yo sé que ahora estás lejos de mí y siempre estoy pensando lo que estás haciendo y si te sientes más feliz, y si te sientes más feliz, oye, y espero yo que no te sientas sola y que tu vida está llena de felicidad, porque deseo que nadie tenga que sentirse ahora mismo como yo, atrapado en la oscuridad, solito en la eternidad, solito en la eternidad, oye. Trompeta.
Hell.
Oye señora, vuélvete acá. Ven acá mi amor, estoy perdido en la eternidad. Es la verdad, es la verdad. Oye señora, vuélvete acá. Vuélvete chiquita. Estoy perdido en la eternidad. Estoy perdido en la eternidad, mami. Oye señora, vuélvete acá. Ven, 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 ven. Estoy perdido en la eternidad. Vuélvete mi amor ahora. Oye señora, vuélvete acá. Oye señorita, ven acá. Estoy perdido en la eternidad. Ahora sí, camina para allá. Saxophone.
To present Word War Debate, the premier debate league. I'm Ben Swan, and I'm here to introduce the new gold standard of debates. Every statement, every argument, every counterpoint is tested under the lights in real time. Let's send it over now to Andrew Wilson and Sam Tripoli inside the ACX1 studios in Atlantic City. Guys?
What we decided to do was get a great team of people together, get one hell of a venue, and put together some of the funnest and most riveting debates that you've ever seen. And I'm going to moderate these debates. And this is going to be fantastic.
And if you're lucky, maybe at the end, Andrew might debate. We don't know. Why would we have Michael Jordan sitting aside coaching? Why not?
We
throw him
have
in the
Michael
game?
Jordan, throw him in the game.
We're going to have the best on, and we're going to put it in the best venue.
There's debates all over the place, but there's no brand of excellence where you go, this is where the best go to bang.
Ah!
And to that effect, that's exactly what we're putting together
To that
in this
effect.
venue. Now we're going to bring that standard of having all that moderation excellence, where I can moderate this debate fairly. A lot of people try their hand at debate moderation, and it's actually far more difficult than people think to do it right. Coming up with the gold standard for the format was critical, and we worked on it. My entire team worked on it, along with Tripoli's entire team, and we came up with just a banger of a venue.
A banger.
Banger.
We're gonna take pro sports with pro debates and create a beautiful hybrid. What you're gonna get are the best of the best going at it, the smartest, the fastest, the most ruthless. Put up or shut up, okay? That's the show.
People being able to eat, people being able
Never
to
been
drink,
done before.
people being able to actually have a good time. They actually want to meet the people who represent their worldviews, and they want to break bread with them. They want to actually talk to them. They want to kind of have input on these ideas, because most of these debaters are representing whole worldviews. Whole worldviews on behalf of people who can't. The mechanic can't do it. The mechanic can't go on CNN and tell these pundits to go f themselves.
Yeah.
That ends up being the job of you, the representation of the worldview.
And we're like, what's the best place to do it at? There's only one place, ACX1 Studios in Atlantic City. is where the champions will be named.
If you want to cover it, you want to stream it, you want to restream it, you want to mix it up, you're more than welcome to do it.
Legally. You gotta be legal. Súbelo, súbelo. Ay, señora.
Vuélvete acá. Ay, ¿por qué me dejaste? Solamente fuiste.
Bang, 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 bang.
Señora, ay, ven acá. Ay, ven, señora. Mira, y espero yo que
Yo.
no te sientas sola y que tu vida está llena.
Oh, we have no Twitch audience.
Porque deseo que nadie tenga que sentirse ahora mismo como yo, atrapado en la oscuridad y solito en la eternidad. Ay, señora, vuélvete, ay, señora, ya se fue.
Ya se fue. Hey, what up, everybody? We are live for a little pre-Thanksgiving little situation. Huge update. Not that huge. I mean, you guys probably don't give it one shit about what I'm about to say. Not even one. Can you believe yourselves? You tune into the stream, you don't even care what I'm about to say. After Shark TV, what up? After Shark. I don't get that name. I know Aftershock. That's one of Rob Knorr's little minions. It's the bat, yeah. What are we talking about here, folks? What are we talking about? Oh, announcement. If you like my discussions with some of the legal goobers, you know the legal goobers that I always talk about? I made a tweet about the goobers earlier. So grateful and thankful to hear that Nate the lawyer is feeling better. He's one of the legal goobers. They do their little show, and I just find them very affable and funny people. And behind the scenes, they're quite nice. This includes Good Logic, Viva Frey, some of these other characters. Well, tomorrow, it's possible, I would say 70% chance it'll be tomorrow that Viva Frey and I have our follow-up discussion on the Trump admin stuff. And this guy's a true believer. I mean, he's a really die-in-the-wool. Is that the idiom? I don't know anything about these idioms, guys. I'm first-generation American. I was born here, but I didn't have all the privileges that you guys did. You second, third, fourth, fifth-generation people. A dyed-in-the-wool? Let me just Google this real quick. Let me just see what's up with this. Dyed in the wool, is that right? Means someone or something is thoroughly and unchangeably set in its ways. That's how I would describe Viva Frey. A dyed in the wool, conservative, MAGA type individual. What up, Common Good? What up, Andy? What up, Rodney? I wonder if this is why I got recommended Pisco 7-month-old legal goober videos. How the word war debate meant. I can't get that world war out of my head. It's occupying so much room. Isn't he a Canadian MAGA? Yeah, he's dyed in the wool MAGA, but he's Canadian. Oops. Sorry about that one. But yeah, he truly is. I think he thinks that, I mentioned this on Live and Learn, he thinks that Mark Carney won because Pierre Poilievre, who's the leader of the Conservatives in Canada, he wasn't doing the podcast circuit enough in America. He should have gone on Valuetainment in Florida. He should have jumped on with Joe Rogan. I don't have the intelligence of Joe Rogan. He should have gone on Joe Rogan, and he should have done like the podcast circuit in America. That's why he lost. So he very much is like, why is Pierre Poilievre not aligned with Trump? You see? This is why Pierre lost. If he had just been more aligned with Trump. I remember what Trump was doing at the time this election was happening. He was like shitting on Canada and saying Canada, not even a real country, not even a real place. We'll just take it off your hands. You'll become the 51st state. So, yeah, that was a bit of a, that was That was a bit of a meme. What up, Asian Glow? What up, Semaphore? You said that in the chat. I think it's time to put you to it. So we're close. My designer guy, he's got some prototypes that we're gonna bang out. To quote a phrase from Word War Debate. So YouTube, your time is coming. Rob Noir bans everyone that disagrees with him nowadays. Rob is live right now talking about blackpilling. Oh, what if we could talk to Rob right now? Wouldn't that be something? Should I DM him? Would you guys hate me if I skipped this? Because I want to watch this. But he gets so uppity when we DM him. I should. Now you should, says Asian Glow. I don't know. Should I? Do it. The fact that Pisco still tries to talk to Rob is so funny. What up, Tomato? DM him? All right. If we can get some likes on the stream, I will DM Rob to see if he's live. Just a friendly chat. Doesn't have to be anything super serious. And you get the emotes if you sub to the channel. You get the emotes. You get the really good emotes. Talk to Rob Noir. Do it. Squash the beef. Bury the hatchet. All right. If I can get 10 different people in the next minute to say do it, I'll do it. All right. Christian says yes. That's 1. Better hurry. You better hurry. Tomato 1, Asian Glow 3. High Clears 4. Guys, only 35 seconds. Thereabouts. Rick Johnson 5. Eloy 6. Jeremy 7. Funky Tornado. Okay, we get it. We did it. We did it. All right. I'll DM the Robster. We'll DM Rob if he's live. Hey, bro. Want to chat? Pick your brain. Pick your brain about Sarah Tomato. Catch up. I'm live right now. I DM'd him. Oh, don't you love it when you message an old friend? What up, gang? Slime Deluxe. Asian Glow says the seed has been planted. Mantis says, I was hoping you would do this. I also want to, Mantis, we need to talk about Tom. We don't talk about tomfoolery. We need to talk about Tom, Mantis. We got some things to say about it. Twitch has made a second class. We're getting the chats. They're coming. Yeah, we need to talk about Tom. We need to talk about Kevin. We need to talk about Tom. And we need to talk about Rob. He will mute or ban you. I know, but I got my own. My review was bullshit. It says, oh, did you watch it? Let's talk. We'll see, Mantis. Let me just see if Rob's going to respond first. You're going to convince me that Tom did the best performance he could have done. I like Tom. I don't think Tom's a bad... Listen, we all were rooting for Tom. But sometimes it happens to me. It happens to the best of us. Is there not a way to have YouTube chat? No, we can't. Not until we have the separate little boxes. It's really an annoying thing, but I don't want to get banned, you know? I don't want to ban. What up, Jazzy? What up, Jazzy? What's that song that goes, "Your way to you're being condescending"? Okay, I'm being condescending. Sorry. I mean, you're probably right. I mean, a little condescending. I don't want me to say it. He conceded in the first fucking intro. That's what... How do we get around that? I thought it was being fair, more than fair. And you of all people should know that I think Tom is very fair. Is Trump still president? Making law simple. We have a fellow, shout out to the legal goober community, to the laid back law people, because they all gathered in support for Nate the lawyer. And I was moved by the whole thing, because they're nice. They're funny. I know some of their views are crazy. I can't help it sometimes. Same thing with Rob, right? They're just certain things that I'm like, I can't help but laugh sometimes. Oh my God. This other guy, the guy who's like my stalker, he messaged me again. He's insane. Absolutely crazy. He's still mad that I called him a bitch. He's still mad. That same guy, guys. He was saying some stuff. I might need to think about how to deal with that. Is his content legal analysis? I haven't watched. I mostly interact with Nate when he's on the laid back law situation. I haven't seen his individual content. He, I would say, was very reasonable with some of the Trump stuff comparatively to the rest of the laid back law people, who I think respectfully a bit unhinged. Respectfully unhinged. There's something that I disagree with him on. He was also, I think, good on the whole double standard for political violence, relevant to the Tom conversation, I should add. Let up our liberal surrender hands to admitting to being condescending to, what's her name? Oh, Rob says he's got stuff to cover. Such a shame. I'll say all good, dude. I'm reviewing. Oh, well, I'll just leave it there. Aw. Sorry, I'm never mind. I'm not gonna say. Not gonna make the joke. And Making Law Simple is also a member of that broader law tube sphere. I think he was on when I did a little visit. Never forget, Talibot considers Malali center right. The guy who says not considering God's intention in creating laws is un-American. Pretty wild situation. Did you see the new court filings with Kristi Noem? I did not. Unless there's something I missed. Is there some big filing that I missed? I know he's got stuff to cover. Let's give him some space. Mr. Rob. Oh wait, DOJ said tonight that it was DHS Secretary Kristi Noem who made the call to proceed with the deportation of more than 100 Venezuelan men to El Salvador, despite a judge's order seeking to block the transfer. Ooh, is this from This is for the DC Boasberg contempt proceeding? I don't know. Is it? Let's take a look at the Politico article. Yeah, this is in response to the deportation. So it turns out it was Kristi Noem's direct order. The puppy assassin ordered all of the people without due process to be sent to torture dungeons where they were sexually abused and tortured. Very cool. And some illegally. That's very nice. Only the best for the Trump administration. What can you do? I mean, I think that some of these people should be charged with kidnapping. I think that Hegseth and Trump should be charged with murder for the killing of the people in the high seas. I pretty much think that this is a time for us to go through every nook and cranny. It's unfortunate that our pardon power is so fast that Trump's probably just going to pardon all these sickos, these losers. But yeah, I mean, these people are scumbags. Oh, I was talking about Nate the lawyer. So shout out Nate the lawyer. If you hadn't heard, they found a tumor in his head, massive, and they had to do emergency surgery to take it out because he was like this is a big deal. And I think that the surgery went good, is what I'm hearing. That maybe there's some lingering effects and some additional treatment that needs to do. But that was the big scare for Nate the lawyer. So we're all on his side, hoping that he pulls through with this little problem. And yeah, that's why I've been shouting him out. And hopefully we'll be doing an interaction in the future. He's been in the chat before, Nate the Lawyer. And I've always said, like, hey, we should do something just us, you know, collab, get to pick your brain. And I'm kind of interested in like how he got here almost, because he has a good amount of subs on YouTube and no doubt doing very well for himself. So like, yeah, I'm sending all my warm thoughts to Mr. Nate the Lawyer out there, and for all the legal goobers who are his extended family, I guess. But yeah, cool. What else was I going to talk about? Shit. Rob. Yeah, chill on Rob a little bit when he says, yeah, he says he has stuff to cover. So that would have been hype, though. That would have been super hype. Anyway, on to, we totally missed this yesterday because I got so like wrapped up. Like I often get obsessed in these conversations. I need to learn to let it go sometimes. I need to take a leaf out of Ariel's book, let it go. But the Schumer stands, I don't know what it is about. They just drive me crazy. Just drive me absolutely crazy. No, Ariel. Oh, no. No, Ariel. I know it's not Ariel, all right? It's Sven. Just kidding. I know. Elsa? Got it. We're good. This is the content I wanted to cover because it's actually... I look at this. I look at the slow descent, what I think is a slow descent, and I am cool with Ryan Mullally interpersonally. I like him just fine. I think in a conversation, I think he's very smug and arrogant. But you know what? People say that about me. So who am I to judge? I'm not trying to impose some objective standard and say that I'm not arrogant or that whatever. That's just my perception. But like the descent from I'm just like a reasonable lib to doing apologia for like the most blatantly fucked up shit in the history of the country is chef's kiss. And I really do think a lot of it is us criticizing him at all and not like embracing him 100% and being like, we agree with everything you're saying. You're so smart. We should adopt your new religion about the objective American moral proposition. And he feels like he's being pushed into the conservative circles or something. Many such cases, by the way. I feel like this is the kind of Anna Kasparian virus of certain enlightened centrist types. Certain enlightened centrist types who make the politics incredibly personal and start to be like, this is what you're doing. You know, you're making me do this. Drew Pavlo also has a little bit of this going on, a little bit of the syndrome where I was a liberal and all of your shit, you forced me to side with Richard Spencer. You forced me. You forced my hand. Now I'm going to vote for Pauline Hanson and going to talk about blood and soil, even though I'm like Mediterranean. So I don't know what that is. That's some kind of, I don't want to say, I don't want to pathologize it, but it's something. It's a trend. It's a disposition. It's a category. You made me become MAGA. Look what you made me do. And I'm just like saying my opinion, bro. I'm just telling it how it is. And why do I think I'm not afflicted by this? Because I think I keep it 100 all the time. Keep it 100 on the land, on the sea, in the sky, 100. When I criticize the Dems, I think in every situation, it's either obviously apparent that I say there's just no standard by which to compare this to what the Republicans do, or I explicitly say that. So I don't think that I suffer for this. And I just tell it how I feel it is. How I feel it is. Did I get blocked by this reporter? No. I just realized I did get blocked by Brianna Joy Gray. What is it with Brianna's? Brianna Joy Gray blocked me, and then Brianna, who's the other Brianna? Not Brianna Taylor. Brianna Wu. She also blocked me. People be blocking me. Jack Posobiec blocked me. Cernovich blocked me. Dave Rubin has blocked me. Cat Turd blocked me. Will Chamberlain blocked me recently. I think like a bunch of major conservative influencers have blocked me. Brianna Wu blocking you is a badge of honor. Why do they block? Just I go in their replies and I say things like for Jack Posobiec, I'm like, there's reporting that you maintain your domicile in this other state, but you voted in Pennsylvania. Care to explain? And they blocked me. Or I think for Dave Rubin, I'm like, why were you celebrating the whole Paul Pelosi thing? Why were you joking about that? But then you start to get mad about people joking about other things, and then he blocked me. And then what else? For Cernovich, I think I tweeted something like, I might have done the Pepe after like Trump had a bad poll. I mean, he ended up winning or something, right? So like, they end up winning and they keep me blocked because I put a Pepe that said, "Ha, look at the poll," or something like that. Drew Pavlou has not blocked me, to his credit. Brianna Jorge, I must have said something like, "This is dumb. What are you talking about? Makes no sense." People don't like it. They simply don't like that. Dude did not want to be called out on his... No, he's committing voter fraud, allegedly. Allegedly committing voter fraud. By the way, I just saw a legal analysis that suggests, based on some court rulings, that Trump's pardon on the 2020 Jan 6 stuff, to get all of his like hooligan friends out, his terrorist friends, that pardon might be so broad as to extend to people who actually committed voter fraud in 2020. Like, there are a couple cases of genuine voter fraud that are at least like percolating in the system, or potential cases that could have been brought for certain individuals, most of them Republicans, right? And it appears language in the pardon is like so broad, there's like a question about whether or not those people who like are actually intending to commit voter fraud were covered. These guys are so degenerately incompetent. I don't know if that's an adverb, but I just want to say it anyway. The chef's kiss is the James Comey thing. And I want to be clear about something. I have no doubt. People saw my tweet where I'm like, this case is dead. When I say it's dead, and I even put in the tweet, but it won't matter because people still at me, that they're going to try to bring it back. I just mean legally. I think it's dead. There's too many issues where Comey has too many strong arguments. It's not coming back in a way that is going to result in a trial occurring. Or if there is a trial, it's going to be so hobbled by like motions in limine and exclusion, or motions like suppression motions, stuff like that, that this case I think is just dead. But I do want to stress that I genuinely think the case is going to like formally come back, in that someone will file an instrument or there'll be an appeal, and they'll try to like revive the case or maybe start a new case. But this particular case, there's just too many issues. I mean, there's so much there. This case is like factually garbage, legally garbage, grand jury fuckery, warrant fuckery, grand jury instruction fuckery, not even having an indictment fuckery, not even being a government attorney, violating the appointments clause, violating the statutes. She's not even like a real U.S. attorney at the time that she filed the instrument. So a fake U.S. attorney filed a fake instrument alleging bullshit, lying to the grand jury, misleading them about the law on a case that's fundamentally flawed and that was pursued vindictively for political reasons. It is a bullshit case, and I think it's dead. There are at least three other strong pending motions to dismiss, even if, and the reasoning of the district court judge here dismissing the case is really strong. I think like it's There's no other good way to read that statute. But even if, and this court will do so many bizarre things to give Trump a win, I don't think that the Supreme Court's going to be chomping at the bit to revive this case. Even these conservative justices, if I had to bet. So I'm going to go on the record and say the case is dead. They're going to try to bring it back in some fashion. I won't say that for other potential cases based on different fact patterns, but at the bare minimum, this allegation, I think it's dead. And if there is a trial, I'll say I think it'll be hobbled by suppression motions in limine to make it like a really just essentially done deal that this guy's not going to get convicted. And that's good. That's what it should be. And we're happy about that. I think similar things, by the way, for anything they might try to put on these various different people who just said don't break the law, right? They're trying to say now that saying don't break the law is itself a crime. And that's what this conversation is about. Ryan Mullally is about to be a sap and be an apologist for the Trump regime and their conduct and words in the aftermath of this video by the Democrats saying, like, you should follow the law. Just listen to how he analyzes it and who he thinks is like principally or primarily at fault. If there's any question, like, we're not even going to put enlightened centrist. Maybe we'll do it if it gets more page views. But we're like, this guy's a conservative. He's DEI pilled or something. And he doesn't want his kids to grow up in a world in which there's affirmative action. And so now he needs to play apologia for the worst regime and the most blatant corruption and blame the victims of the corruption. And you think I'm lying to you. This is Rob and sorry. It's a more clever name than Word War Debate. It's Law and Order. Pretty sick, huh? You know, Rob and I were going to do a little show together. I think it would have been more fun, like a Hannity and Colb's thing. But he found a more beautiful belle of the ball in Ryan. And I say, power to him. You know what? I'm going to say, I'm shipping it. This is going to go all the way. And let them just glaze each other. I think he has terminal conservatism, says Prudis Iscariot. Rob of Nor. I think that their denonym, is that the phrase? Is that the word denonym? Denonym? I don't know what the term, what is it? What do you, demonym? I'm like learning all these words. The word they use to associate themselves, the Rob community, are Norberts. And when I hear that, I just think of Norbit, the Eddie Murphy movie. What can I say? What can I say? Except you're welcome. I think the Peace score is cooler. You guys like pissers, and I don't know. You do weird shit. I don't condone that stuff, but Norbit was Brian Wilson's favorite movie. Interesting. The Norberts. Wow, words. Okay, so let me not bury the lead anymore. And we'll take a look at Ryan Mullally covering, in my opinion, for the Trump administration bullshit on the follow the law, please, appeals by the Democrats. And let's see what they say.
We definitely want to make sure that we're getting to all of those sorts of questions. So start with this initial story. It's sort of a comedy of errors. It's ultimately what you end up seeing is who could fall on their face last, it seems like, with a lot of these legal stories. And this first story, which is sort of, you had these Democrats that put out this ad that sort of implied that there was something illegal that Trump was ordering our military to do, and that lawfully the military could resist these orders because they're adhering to the Constitution instead of unlawful orders. Then, of course, Trump calls that out.
No, it's implying that he might do it, that he might order something illegally. It's so insane that people would not be worried about that. Look at what Trump is doing right now with the military as we speak domestically. That this isn't a legitimate fear. Not that he, by the way, I do think that he has given illegal orders to the military, manifestly illegal orders that violate posse comitatus, among other things. In addition, like violating other parts of the Constitution as applied when they're doing these roving Kavanaugh stops and just stopping people on the basis of basically just their race, which wasn't explicitly given the stamp of approval by the Supreme Court, but Kavanaugh seemed to be like, yep, A-okay, even in the interior of the country. But thank you so much for the sub on Twitch. You've been subbed for 10 months. That's 1 year in metric time. Hell yeah. We totally support that, Tuvox. So Rob says, sort of implying that there's some existing illegal order that they want them to resist. No, that's very thin. And anyway, there might be. So what? Yeah, I do think that there are illegal orders being given. Now, am I saying that they should disobey orders right now? I'm not saying that. But I do think that reminding the military at this moment, when Trump is cavalier in ordering the military to domestically enforce civilian law, not to follow manifestly unconstitutional orders, illegal orders, and reminding them that it's no more or less their obligation today as it is any other time. There's nothing criminal at all in that. Nothing at all. What's the other reaction?
Says this is sedition and seems to imply
Trump
that this
says it's
could lead to
sedition.
a death penalty.
So just keep that in mind, sedition. And they're gonna toss away the sedition idea very quickly. But look at how they just glance over it as they talk about it. They're like, yeah, it's not sedition. It's not. So don't you have a problem? Like, you're the one crying about insurrection when it was an insurrection under the historical test of insurrection. And you're like, oh my God, they called it insurrection. And you acknowledge that it's not sedition. You acknowledge it, as you'll see. But notwithstanding that, like, you're not upset that they're calling them the seditious six, and Trump's talking about executing them for sedition, when you even acknowledge the punishment for seditious conspiracy as in death. If that were the case, maybe the pardons would have come too late for the seditious conspiracists for January 6th. Probably not, because the appeals process for death cases is pretty long. I don't agree with the death penalty. Unlike Tim Pool sometimes. Allegedly.
Type thing. What's your take on all this, starting with sort of the Democrats' initial claims that seem to be implying that the military could refuse these orders?
Yeah, and we
could refuse which orders? You notice that, right? You notice that none of them provide, like, if Rob's inclination is correct, that they're implying that they should not follow certain orders, which orders do you think that they're implying should not be listened to now? There's nothing. They're not aware of any orders that they're saying currently to not follow. They have nothing. Absolutely zero. It is a pure reminder of their legal obligation given the unprecedented times. Remember COVID? While we recognize that these are unprecedented times, given Trump's cavalier use of the military domestically in an unprecedented way, hey, guys, remember your obligation to follow the law. Is that the better interpretation of what is likely happening here? Or is the better interpretation there's some current order that's been given that they're specifically trying to get them to not follow, but I just don't know what that order is?
need to get into Trump as well, but starting with the Democratic lawmakers, I mean, there's a thing that I like to call a lawyer's lie. It's when you say something.
A lawyer's lie. So what are you saying? This is a lie.
And it's technically true.
So it's true, right? By technically true, we mean true. Okay.
But you're leaving out the really important part, and you're leaving.
So you're leaving out, so you're like misleading, right? That's what you would have. This is kind of the argument that you're saying some things that are technically true, but it's like a lie by omission. It's misleading by you're omitting something super material. That's what Ryan is saying. That's a concept I understand, It's technically true, but there's something. So let's see. What is the big thing that you're misleading about?
It out on purpose because, you know, we who write careful legal statements are pretty good at coming up with a way of phrasing something
Irrelevant. Just tell us what is the material omission.
that skirts the line, right? And that's what these lawmakers did because they are right.
It skirts the line. It skirts the line into what? What does it skirt the line into? Into something illegal? It skirts the line that they're doing something unconstitutional or criminal even?
Any soldier has the right.
So they're right
to refuse to follow an unlawful order. That's true.
Okay, so what's the misleading aspect of it, right? Because that's what Ryan's claim is. That this is technically true, but it's misleading. So let's see what's the misleading part.
True. They left out something rather important, which is that under the Uniform Code of Military Justice and the laws of court-martial, there is a presumption that all orders are lawful.
There is a presumption in the code that orders are lawful unless it's like manifestly illegal or something like that. There's some standard to it. How is that a material omission, right? Saying you have an obligation to follow orders is not implying or materially omitting that there's a standard, which is a presumption that you follow orders. That standard doesn't need to be told to the fucking rank and file. They're always taught, follow orders, follow orders, follow orders, follow orders. They don't need to be super irrigated with additional, oh, by the way, you should in general follow orders. That presumption is obvious, and it's not something of note. The recommendation to follow the law holds, right? You have an obligation to follow the law. And omitting the technical legal standard as to when the presumption doesn't apply, and you'll watch this later on, right? Like, Mullally will say, these aren't sophisticated, these are grunts, not very sophisticated, whatever he says about it, to suggest that, like, oh, right, they're not as profound or they're not as, like, knowing as, like, lawyers after the fact. Well, if that's the case, then why would they be able to apply in a very technical way this technical standard of rebutting the presumption of lawfulness? It just doesn't make any sense. You're accusing people of saying what everyone always says all the time. Whenever you say, hey, how do you know that, like, this won't turn into tyranny or that the troops won't be used for some evil end, you're always assured, don't worry. Troops have rights to refuse to do an illegal order. That's just the advice. And, you know, failing to get the technical, like, in general, there is a presumption of legality that we're expected to impose on orders, isn't a material omission that misleads the general obligation of troops to follow the law. It is not at all misleading.
And if a soldier says this is unlawful, I'm not gonna follow the order, they're taking the risk of being court-martialed for mutiny.
Do you think that they're not aware of that? Right? Think about that. I don't know about mutiny, by the way. I don't think that's mutiny. There's a specific mutiny might have a separate definition. I don't know that that's the case. I read some things. But put that aside. Do you think that soldiers aren't aware that if they refuse orders, they run a risk? Right? This is what you have to get in your head if you're Ryan Mullally. It's like, they're lying to these poor soldiers because they're not going to know that they have to follow orders, and if they don't, there could be consequences. What the fuck? You think these troops are so stupid and ignorant that they, like, think that they don't have an obligation to follow orders and there won't be consequences if they don't, if they're insubordinate? I think the technical charge or whatever it is insubordination, not mutiny. I'm not sure about that, though. Don't quote me on it. I'm not a scholar on the military code. But imagine that, right? Imagine thinking that you're Ryan Mullally, like, oh my God, these Democrats are so irresponsible. Because look, they say this thing, and then all of a sudden the troops are going to be disobeying orders, and they're not going to know that there's consequences for not obeying orders. Yeah, they're troops, dude. They know there are consequences not violating orders. What are you, fucking stupid? It doesn't need to be told to them, such that this is a material omission, like a materially misleading statement because you omitted that clarification, right? Imagine if they did. Imagine if they added something. By the way, guys, there's just be aware that there are potential consequences at the end of their statement. I think Ryan would give a shit. Like, oh, that cures the statement. No, they would be complaining, and it's superfluous. They know. Jesus Christ.
For, like that, they could go to jail. They could lose their career.
They don't know that. They don't know that, Ryan. The Democrats are, like, confusing all these troops everywhere who are even watching these Alyssa Slotkin. All of a sudden, these troops are like, wow, I can just do whatever I want all the time. There'll never be consequences. It's so irresponsible. Dude, like, this is more of the shit that, like, it's just nonsensical from this guy. The more you start to take a step back, and it's the same with the Trump immunity doctrine, it's the same with what he has to say about the American moral proposition. It's just nonsense.
Asking him to take a small risk. And the thing about this situation, like talk about like the boats in Venezuela that Trump's been striking. All right. Is that legal? It's a gray area. I'm going to tell you.
I just love this because remember we were having the conversation about the Trump immunity decision when we were bringing up how horrible the decision was given the amount of power the president has with respect to strikes in foreign countries. And so we were constructing these hypotheticals, these massive hypotheticals on, like, imagine Mitt Romney is traveling abroad and the president in bad faith and for a pretextual reason says that this is not the real Mitt Romney, it's the fake Mitt Romney, he's actually an Al-Qaeda agent, he's actually a member of Tenderawa, and they go and fucking bomb him. Would he be liable for that? And Ryan, they're like, no, that would never happen. It would never be the case that we would have some, like, you know, the president ordering the death of people in a way that, like, it's, you know, clearly not in keeping with the rules of war in such a way that the UK is not giving us data. I mean, that would never occur. And if it would not be covered by the immunity. I mean, that's what they were trying to sell us, that these hypotheticals on the immunity doctrine about killing people, using the power to kill, right? And that's what Ryan would say. He's like, oh, the president doesn't have unilateral kill ability. Well, now it's a gray area. Now you, maybe he does. Maybe he can kill anyone he wants on the high seas for any reason. That is how much he has been moved. Now he's like, oh, well, I guess maybe the president can just unilaterally click murder on any person.
For sure, we don't know. But Obama had drone strikes in the Middle East.
I love this. And they will never, ever, ever, ever deal with the arguments, totally breaking this down as to the differences in how we would apply the framework of the immunity doctrine. First, we would not say that Obama is criminally immune for those drone strikes. We would not say that. He could be charged with it. One defense he could raise is justification as a matter of law. That's something he could raise as a defense. But in the course of a normal criminal procedure, I don't think Obama should be immune for that conduct. But even though it is not even relevant, this issue of Obama, he's bringing it up just to do, what about Obama? What about Obama? Like, it's so instinctual for them to do this whataboutism, this dog shit equivalence, and Rob just nodding because that's the only language he knows. That instinctually go, what about Obama? Well, okay, first of all, with respect to the immunity doctrine, I don't know that it's that he should be immune or that Obama would be immune under my lights for those strikes. And second, you don't see a difference between the justification of an ongoing congressionally approved war and exigencies related to the inability to capture a person versus killing someone because of drugs. That is not a distinction that matters in the rules of war. And if drugs were a sufficient societal ill to just kill and ignore the rules of war and conduct of wartime and U.S. law, why couldn't the president designate any other, like, in his subjectively determined mind or analysis, some other societal ill? People who are trying to evade tariffs and are, like, importing illegally certain, like, I don't know, grocery or agricultural products. Individuals who they claim are like sex traffickers. Once you start to unmoor it from war and active hostilities, and now it's just like anything that we can, causally link down the line to American death. Now we're talking about using the military to just kill people when that's not the punishment and that's not the authority of the president to do that. But for Ryan, it's a gray area because Obama drone striked some Al-Qaeda people. And yeah, sometimes you make mistakes, for sure. I'm not denying that. That's not the question. The question is, what is the rationale given? The stated rationale. And I think that Obama should be able to be charged for that if someone wanted to bring the case. I don't think he should be immune, but he should be able to raise justification as defense. But if his stated rationale is something like, oh, we just think that they're drug traffickers and we don't like drug traffickers, that's not going to fly. But if the stated rationale is we're at war with Al-Qaeda, this is an enemy combatant, it would be no different than like Abraham Lincoln ordering troops to go kill Confederates. Under the legal framework of the United States, the Confederacy was never a different country, but he ordered, nonetheless, Americans to kill other Americans. He didn't need to bring them to court. That's part of the operation of war. But that wouldn't stand to reason then that Lincoln could just kill anyone he wants in the North who's not engaged in war, or just unilaterally kill POWs. No one would say that. It would need to be according to the rules of war. You can't just, claim war. I claim a war with a made-up cartel that's being led by Nicolas Maduro, and now I can do anything I want with anyone who I allege is a member of this cartel. It's just ridiculous. And he essentially is part of this parade of nonsense coming from enlightened centrists saying, who can say, who can know, bullshit. These people should be charged with murder. Send them to jail, lock them up.
Very similar. Apparently that was legal, or at least not challenged. There's no Supreme Court case on it. And I think it's recklessly irresponsible to ask soldiers to
ask them
their livelihood on the outcome of a case that hasn't been decided yet. You can't.
So you're asking them to bet their livelihood, their life, on a case that hasn't been decided yet. So that's you, Ryan. Suggesting that what the Democrats are trying to do is tell these people not to do the airstrikes against the targets in the sea. What's your evidence of that? That's what they're trying to target, as opposed to, I don't know, the domestic deployment of the military? And really, I mean, how far are you going to stretch this, Ryan? So if they, Trump is giving the orders to shoot down planes filled with migrants, I don't know, they're dropping them off in Mexico to be deployed for them to thereafter go into the United States. What would you do? Right? Take that example. They say there's an invasion at the southern border. That's the official position of this government, that there's an invasion at the southern border. That's the official position of the U.S. government. You're an airplane pilot. You're a member of the Air Force. You get an order. There is a civilian aircraft coming into Mexico filled with what we think there's a mix of families, migrant families, and drug traffickers. And we know their intent, because we have these logs, is to come into America and for the migrants to go into the United States and to cross the border illegally, and for the drug peddlers to do that. And they say, you have to go shoot down that civilian aircraft. What would you do if you're this Air Force pilot? I'll tell you right now, these strikes on targets in the middle of the ocean, these are illegal acts of malicious murder. And I would not be a party to it. And I think there's nothing wrong saying that whatsoever, even if that was what their intention was.
Do that. Like, these are people defending the country. If Trump orders them
You're an
to strike
airplane.
those boats and they say no, they are probably going to jail. That's the most likely outcome. And it's disgraceful to infer that they would have some other outcome, or that they must disobey orders and take this risk upon themselves.
Yeah, I mean, it would be the equivalent. Like, there's the thing I hear the most that's like this in my world is, I've debated several times on sort of unlawful law enforcement actions, such as they pull someone out of a car. Usually it's a race debate, right? So you'll be talking to someone about like, oh, did they mistreat this particular person because of racism, etc. And my feeling on that's been, it's my duty as someone who's not a lawyer and someone who's looking out for, knowing that some people are listening to me, to say, always to the best of your ability, you should comply with law enforcement, unless it is an insane above and beyond, right? And I had, the last time I debated.
And the assumption is that doing military strikes on no more than alleged drug traffickers is not insane and above the pale. I mean, like, it's an insane thing to do. It is not warranted to do. It's not justified. It's illegal. It's murder. Every one of these people should be impeached, removed from office, and charged with murder. These are the people that are trying to tell you, don't worry, it's not bad yet. Even if you were to assume that is the Democrats' intent, is to get them to disobey these particular airstrikes. If that's the case, query why they're doing it now and not like, after the first strike happened or the second strike happened, but we're like at like strike number 23 or something, or it's in the like 20s or something. These strikes murdering people, and other countries are saying that their citizens, innocent citizens, not drug traders, some even say fishermen, are being caught up in it. So even if it was this, I mean, for you to say we're not in an insane level, that's it's like take the following, right? Imagine that you're a cop. You're a cop, right? You're a cop car. You're a cop. And you stop and pull over a drug trafficker on the border. And Trump says, take the shot. You taking that shot? You shooting this drug trafficker in the head? Or if you see them coming across the border, you taking that shot as a cop to kill? You have no reason to think that they're about to, an imminent threat in that sense. They're going to sell their drugs. They're trafficking their drugs. You're taking that shot? You would say, no, that's not the punishment for this crime. Cops actually have an obligation to pursue and arrest people who break civilian law. If they can't safely do that, and in the course of their apprehension, because they have a duty to apprehend, someone is posing a risk to life or serious bodily injury, then yeah, obviously you can take the shot. But you have an obligation to try. This is crazy, man. And he's just sitting there like nothing, like this isn't the most insane thing in the world. Everyone would understand the situation if it were in the interior of the country. Everyone would say, oh my God, right? Like if there was a drug trafficker in the middle of the country and Trump is ordering drone strikes in the middle of the interior of the country, everyone would get it. The one thing that makes this different is it's outside the country. And so it has this veil of, oh, it's legitimate because it's not in it is in our backyard, but it's not literally on the territory of the United States. And therefore it's okay. But everyone would understand how insane this would be if it were in the continental United States.
Someone, they were like, so if law enforcement says we demand you tie up your wife and start slapping her in the face, well, that's such an absurd example. But what happens is by them claiming
it's so absurd. Imagine them asking to beat someone in the police car. Yeah, imagine asking to kill people who are not alleged to have engaged in warfare against the United States. They're alleged to have done nothing more than violate criminal law. Part of a gang member or not. Gang members or not. I say this even if I knew for certain that they were gang members. I would say this if even I knew for certain they were the most vicious members of Tren de Aragua. That's what a principled person who defends the rule of law would say, not one of these fascist apologists.
Well, technically, legally, if law enforcement goes beyond the scope, you're allowed to lawfully resist. Right, but you're saying that with the implicit assumption in this example where they pulled this man over for speeding. And it's like, no, you're going to get someone killed. Someone's going to flee the police or they're going to start...
You're going to get someone killed. You're going to get someone killed. You're killing other human beings in these strikes. The question of life and death is before us, whether you'd like it or not. That's the situation that your guy forced us into. That's not on us. That's not on the Democrats. That's what you force us into. And if you get triggered hearing us say this is fucked up, insane, right? Again, even assuming this is the intent of the Democratic legislatures, if you get triggered and start getting upset and in your feelings about it, so be it. We have a right to stand up and say, this is atrocious. This murder being done on our behalf is absolutely unjustified. It's a crime. All of these people should be in jail for the rest of their lives for this crime.
Fighting back against law enforcement, and then law enforcement's going to escalate that force, and they're going to get away with it, right? Regardless if you thought the initial stop was wrong. That's exactly what's going on here. It's technically what they said is true, but it is undoubtable that the implicit message here is we think that Trump is doing things that are unlawful, and so therefore we will protect you, and you're within your rights to ignore them.
Undoubtable, he says. Undoubtable, that's the intent. Imagine that you would apply that standard to like everyone that he's talking about. Remember, by the way, how these Trump supporters would say, look, after Trump gave his speech at the Ellipse, he has one self-serving statement in there, which is, go march peacefully, right? That's in the speech. And we say, but look at this, look at the buildup, look at what he's asking for, look at his tweet after the fact, after he knows these motherfuckers are already breaking in, and they know there's violence, and they know that the proceedings have been broken. Look at what Trump is saying. And they'll say, what, are you a mind reader? He said go peacefully. He said do it lawfully. Like, the fact we're even having this conversation, you want to talk about double standards. How much they hinged their bad faith arguments that, hey, he said be peaceful. He said be peaceful. And you think they're going to come out and say, wow, you're a mind reader now? But with this, undoubtedly the intent is we're going to protect you, and Trump is currently doing unlawful things with the military in this different ways. I think there's ambiguity on that about what they're specifically referencing. If I'm being honest with you, it might have something to do with the deployments in the fucking country. You know, I think that's another plausible reading. I don't think it's so clear that the reference is to the strikes. Perhaps it's the potential for a war in Venezuela, a war that's not been authorized by Congress, and it's not conceivably justified under the existing authorization of use of military force.
And it's not going to be these senators whose lives are ruined by it. It's going to be these average military people, and it's a shame that it's came to that.
And it's always that, isn't it, huh? It's always that. It's always this appeal to class solidarity, and it's constant identity. Oh, the poor. It's not going to be these senators who suffer. It's not going to be. It's going to be your. No, listen. It either is the case or is not the case. This advice is crucial, needed, and legal to give. You trying to pass the buck and say, "Oh, these poor military members," when I have faith that the military is told that there will be consequences if they frivolously disobey orders. I don't think that needs to be fucking told to them. If it weren't such a pressing time and such unprecedented, unprecedented time and unprecedented misconduct and corruption by this administration and the use of the military in unprecedented ways, both domestically and abroad, this advice wouldn't have to be given, potentially as forcefully as it was. But I'm pretty sure that these servicemen and women, they understand the consequences and the gravity of potentially refusing orders. And so this whole pretense, this game that Ryan and Rob are playing here, where we're hoodwinking our military servicemen, I think it's more disrespectful to them than the notion that they would be told and reminded, hey, like, shit's crazy, guys. Don't forget.
And arguably a crime. That there is a crime, I think, maybe you know more about this in the USMJ, for people that are sort of encouraging refusal of orders. And so there is a potential crime that could come with what these senators are doing as well.
I mean, certainly, if the senators were still in the active military and they said what they said, they would be, the articles of court-martial would be drawn, right?
Well, they're claiming that they're going to do that with Kelly.
Yeah, because it's dicey.
So if they were active service people, I actually don't know. Are you allowed to be an active service person and engaged in politics? Maybe not. I'm not sure. Would you be court-martialed for saying, hey, guys, remember, you don't have an obligation to follow legal orders? You'd be court-martialed? for saying that. Let's see. Can you be in active service and a member of Congress? Yes, but with significant restrictions, members of this is AI. Members of Congress can serve in National Guard or reserves as long as they're not on active duty for more than 270 consecutive days. They cannot be in active service in the traditional sense of the U.S. Constitution. This is what Toadbro is saying. Incompatibility clause prevents them from holding two government offices at once. If a reservist is called to active duty for more than 270 days, they must resign their congressional seat. But I'm just like not sure. Like, what would be the charge in a court martial for saying that advice, right? Like, what would be the claim? You said something that both people admit is true. So saying true things is grounds for a court martial, and reminding service people of an obligation that they absolutely have is something you can be court-martialed for? For insubordination? For that? For saying something that, I mean, I guess if you've been ordered not to give out that advice or something, right? But would it really be preemptively saying that would be grounds for a court-martial? Remember when the military, like when General Milley said something like, by the way, we don't get involved in elections? What did he say? General Milley before the 2020 election. What did he say? He was like, on August 2020, right? General Milley says the Constitution and laws of the United States and states establish procedure for carrying out elections. I do not see the U.S. military as part of this process. I believe deeply in the principle of an apolitical U.S. military. This is Milley while he's the senior general, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. Are you going to tell me that statement, that he could be court-martialed for it? For saying the U.S. military doesn't resolve election disputes. Bullshit. If it happens, give me the precedent. Give me the precedent for that. That there has ever been a sustained court-martial for such statements. Putting aside that this is part of their training, which is seemingly acknowledged by both members of this illustrious show.
Can they recall him and then do it? Like, and we'll see how that plays out, because there are obviously in the military rules about you can't ferment disorder. You can't tell people, hey, let's all resist orders on Tuesday. Like,
is that what this is? Is that what's going on here? Are they fomenting disorder by reminding them of a core obligation that they have?
The military is a chain of command organization. That's its bread and butter. Following orders is exactly what you're supposed to do. And the truth is, that's why the presumption exists, right? Because there's a presumption.
Who's denying it? Where is this being hidden? From whom is this opaque? Which service member is it really in doubt that the presumption is you follow orders? When? I mean, even culturally, right? Even culturally among the different cases of military engagement, the different scandals that have occurred, this is something that is in the zeitgeist of military stories, of disgraced former members of the military, this kind of thing. Right? Remember My Lai massacre? People look back and like one of the air pilots who like stopped it, right? There was a U.S. service member who actually came down and like ordered the troops to fire if they didn't stop their like barbaric killing of all the civilians in the My Lai massacre. You guys remember that? So like this whole notion of just following orders, this isn't something where like, okay, I'm gonna listen to Alyssa Slotkin now, and it looks like I can just do whatever I want. They're fomenting disorder. It's so silly. This is a joke.
Orders are lawful. Why? Well, it's true. You have the right to resist an unlawful order, and you have the obligation to resist what's called a manifestly unlawful order, right? Like,
so look at what he's saying. You have the duty, in fact, to disobey these orders, such orders. So telling someone what their lawful duty is, that is fomenting disorder. Weird.
They said, like, go genocide that town. Or they said, like, go essay that girl. Like that.
Go genocide that town. Genocide that town. So, like, go kill people who aren't combatants. Right? I assume by genocide that town, he means, kill members, human beings, without a justification to kill them. How is that mapping on one-to-one with our situation right now? We've probably killed the equivalent of a town, a small town, in these bombings of people who are not combatants. Go SA that girl, he says. I don't know where we got in our mind that, like, death is something trivial. That murder is something just like, okay, kill a bunch of people. That's like, whatever. But a direct order to essay a woman or something, I guess it like appeals to their sense of Galahad, knight in shining armor thing. But when it's a drone strike or a bomb, then they can forget about it. And then it's just like a stat. And they just forget it. Like, oh yeah, I mean, I guess maybe he was a fucking member of a drug smuggling operation. I guess, kind of, maybe. Crazy. This whole thing's crazy.
Okay, yeah, no question there. But when it's in a gray area, soldiers need to be able to operate, and they have to be able to follow orders. So they rely on the presumption. They say, well, okay, I was ordered to do this. I get that there's a legal dispute, but I can follow through because it's presumptively legal, so I'm not going to get in trouble, right? And
it's presumptively legal to kill someone who's a non-combatant just smuggling drugs. When you haven't had any showing that you can't apprehend them, when you haven't had any showing that to anyone's satisfaction of an evidentiary case that they are actually guilty of what they're being alleged with, and even if they were, this would be grounds to actually kill them.
And yeah, I think that encouraging soldiers to resist orders that are in that gray area is definitely fermenting unrest amongst the ranks.
Definitely.
Now, I've never
definitely.
heard
What's the case law on that? What are the comparative cases from the military tribunals and courts that have heard on that stuff where this type of suggestion where it's just basically repeating a truism that no one disputes is true, a cliche that no one disputes is true, a cliche that Trump himself retweeted like in this very month? Do you see the levels of look at this shit. This is gross, man. This is gross.
Somebody getting called back into service to be court-martialed. So I don't know whether that nuance with Kelly is going to hold up, but certainly if he'd been in the armed services, they would have been court-martialed for that, because it's
certainly.
I mean, imagine
it's unthinkable to say that you have to follow orders unless they're manifestly legal. It's unthinkable. Of course you'd be court-martialed. Of course you would be. Proof?
Imagine the Obama administration. And by the way, this is not me in favor of these policies. I was against the drone strikes during the Obama administration. I think it's not.
You were against killing Al-Qaeda members. Were you against the strike against Osama bin Laden? I love that they say this, by the way. They say this shit. And they're like, oh, yeah, like I was totally against. You might be against the drone strike policy, but in a broader sense. But you know what they're talking about here is Al-Awlaki. Really? You were against Obama going after like ISIS? Show me that, by the way. Show me that you were against Obama like bombing terrorists. Show me when that happened. I actually am going to press X doubt that these people are all up in arms at like bombing terrorists. Number one. Terrorists who are in active war, declared war against the United States. ISIS, Al-Qaeda. I'm just going to press X doubt. Were you against America unilaterally going into Pakistan to kill Osama? Oh no, he did a crime. Oh, well, but like Al-Awlaki didn't? The principal distinction is A, no immunity for any of this shit. And B, one group of people is in a state of war with the United States. And the other group of people are not. The other people are at most, part of a crime ring and criminal gangs.
Great policy. I'm not sure it's legal. But if a soldier had said, no, I'm not pushing the button, obviously court-martialed. Obviously court-martialed.
And here's why. Right?
Obviously.
2 things to say on this real quick. Like, when it comes to military specifically, someone who's soft like me, like, the nature of what the military is doing on an average conflict is something that would turn my stomach, even if it's morally just. You're talking about intentionally ending the lives of people who are enemy combatants, enemy soldiers, etc. If you allow it up to the troops' judgment, who knows the sort of judgment that they could come to and say, I think this is unethical or immoral or illegal. And now all of a sudden, look where you're at. Take that drone strike issue. Let's assume that we had some sort of special force that was on the ground, right? And that was targeting that. Like, okay, the target's in the area. Now go ahead and do the strike. And you don't. You literally could jeopardize the lives of your...
You can play this game of the hypothetical all day long. Because you can say that, yeah, but what if there's a family of children and the order is to cut off all their limbs and then, like, torture them? You're saying that they should follow that? Like, we can all play the game. The question is, now, A, how do we apply the advice that we all agree is true? And B, as to what Trump is actually ordering, which scenario are we most... I can't fucking talk. Which scenario are we closer to? Are we closer to the, oh my God, like, this is insane? If, by the way, they're referencing the drone trucks as opposed to the domestic deployment of the military, which I think, again, is an open question. Is that where we're at in this, like, unworkable situation that they can't even be relied on to do, like, the basic things? Or are we closer to, like, this is, like, super fucked up. The British stopped sharing their intelligence with us. That's just like a vibe check. We can play this parade of absurdities on both sides of the ledger, but they're genuinely convinced of it because they're not thinking about the other ratchet, which we're closer to.
Fellow soldiers by refusing to carry out even an order such as that, let alone other orders that we would see. So that's why the presumption needs to be there, because else the chain of command falls through. And if you just let it up to...
No one is denying that there's a presumption. I'm going to say that 3 more times. No one is denying that there's a presumption. No one is denying there's a presumption. No one is denying that there's a presumption. So Ryan introduced that concept that this is like omitting in the heads of the soldiers because they're so clueless that there's a presumption of that they have to follow orders, that they're bound to follow orders. No one is in doubt about that. But they have convinced themselves that Democrat Alyssa Slotkin and Mark Kelly have basically bamboozled and convinced, or have the ability to convince, all these people that there is no presumption of the normalcy and legality of orders, that they actually don't have this like strong obligation to follow orders in the main. This is their view of our military and what these Democrats are capable of.
Every soldier, like, look, you make up your mind whether or not you think technically this might fall slightly outside the bounds of legality. All of a sudden, what you've done is anybody with any sort of political motivation could make those claims. Look at the things that they have claimed that what Trump does is illegal. And let's not kid ourselves, it could happen the other way. You could absolutely have Obama or Biden and some of the orders that they declared be thought to be illegal by reasonable people. But you can't have soldiers on the ground trying to make those decisions in real time, or else lives will be in jeopardy.
Oh, like imagine it in the...
By the way, I bet you if you go through half these people's Twitter, they're going to be saying shit about Biden's orders and different things. Like, he's not there. You don't have to follow what he's saying.
National Guard context. We've had a lot of discussions about National Guard in the city this year, right? There's litigation in LA. There's litigation in the Ninth Circuit. There's litigation in Portland. There's litigation in Chicago. There's district court decisions. There's Supreme Court. There's appellate court decisions. Eventually, this is going to the Supreme Court. If Trump gives an order that says the National Guard needs to deploy in Chicago and defend this federal building, right? And a soldier says, I'm not doing it because I think that's illegal. Well, it's like, well, hold on, guy. This is a swirling legal question. It's who knows what's going to happen. You got conflicting courts. You got appellate courts overruling district courts. It's eventually going to go to the Supreme Court. You don't know whether it's illegal. You don't know. You're gambling. You're gambling on what the Supreme Court's going to do. And if it turns out that you're wrong and it is illegal, the military code's perfectly clear. Your personal philosophy, your personal conscience, your personal religion is...
No one doubts that assessment. That's not in question at all. Don't let this loser, I mean, we're on good terms, bamboozle you into thinking that the military service people are convinced that they should do such a thing lightly. That's not the situation we're in. And notice the difference in like the domestic deployments. And those domestic deployments, right, there's at least channels and instrumentalities by which there's judicial review of those decisions. But really, with respect to the foreign strikes, where is the ability for us to actually understand the legality of what's going on, but for us to be in a situation in which potentially we have to suss out whether it's legal through a refusal or something like that. It just, one, the severity of what's being asked in the context of these strikes to kill people who are not combatants and who are at most accused of breaking criminal law, versus deploying the United States, where there are ways in which the legality of those deployments and those measures can be tested in courts, at least some. It wouldn't be that way if Trump had his way of like everything's unreviewable. But what Ryan is trying to do is expand the zone of executive power. And it's so laughable because the guy claims he's concerned about executive overreach and big government. Every day I hear him argue about how the president should have more power that's unreviewable without discretion, and that people should be like less willing to check the president, even when he is doing such outrageous things as these strikes and, frankly, these deployments.
Not a justification for disobeying an order. You have to be right. You have to be actually right that it was illegal, or you go to jail. And I think that that's just not a thing you can ask a soldier to do. They're not legal scholars. You can't ask them to guess how the Supreme Court's going to.
They're not legal scholars, but if you had just said that there's a default presumption of legality, and you said it, this is just for like manifestly illegal orders, they would have been able to apply that in a legal way. Huh? If you think that there's any obligations for soldiers to not follow legal orders, that necessarily requires them to make decisions of legality. Do you understand that, Ryan and Rob? They want to be like, of course, we're not going to ask them to do anything crazy because Trump would never do that, right? But necessarily, if soldiers are called on in any respect to consider the legality of the orders they're being given, that necessarily requires them to opine on the legality of what they're being asked to do. There's no way around it. You can say, oh, they're not lawyers. What do they know? That's no less than what we ask cops to do. Guess what? Cops are also bound to follow the law. They're not mostly lawyers. Would you ever be like, a cop is ordered by his superior to do an illegal search warrant into someone's home? You think that cop has an obligation not to follow that when he knows that it's an illegal search warrant, it's an illegal wiretap? Of course. He swears an oath to the Constitution. And if he knows manifestly, right, we don't have a warrant for this wiretap, we're just doing it just to do it. Or his superior orders him to steal money from like a drug run or something manifestly illegal. What would we say of the cop that does an illegal wiretap? What did they say, by the way, of the improprieties of some of what's happening with the investigation into the Russia connections to the Trump campaign, Crossfire Hurricane? Were they like, them DOJ lord, they're just following orders, those FBI agents who like execute this, they're just following orders? No. Fuck no. That we ask our law enforcement officials to swear an oath to the Constitution and to judge whether something is manifestly beyond the contours of the law or seriously violates the law or violates the law in any respect necessarily requires non-lawyers to make those kinds of judgments based on their specific instruction in their classes. Hopefully, the instruction is decent. And so this whole "they're not lawyers" excuse is garbage. You can't avoid it. Cops have an obligation to follow the law too.
Rule, right? So you have to give them the presumption. And I think that, what strikes me about this is just the callous disregard on the Democrat side for this whole
disregard. Where's the callous disregard, by the way, among like Trump? Like Trump is saying these people should be executed. The callous disregard is among the people who are saying, in the context of tons of corruption, illegal stuff, callous disregard is saying, hey, you got to follow the law. You have an oath to the Constitution, and you have the right to refuse illegal orders. That's callous disregard. But then saying, oh my God, sedition, fucking sedition, kills people. That's not callous disregard. This is callous disregard. Reminding the troops of things that are true and accurate, that is callous disregard. Because in your mind, they're omitting a standard that everyone already knows. Namely, the regularity and presumption to follow orders.
Soldiers involved. And I don't think they're going to fall for it. I don't think so. I think soldiers actually know what's up. But
so they're not going to fall for it. So there's no callous disregard, right? No harm. Because before you were saying like, this is so reckless. This is so absurdly reckless. And now you're like, they're not going to fall for it. So it's not dangerous at all. So this whole callous disregard, just nonsense, right? There's nothing like no harm going to be done.
Like, if a soldier did see that message and then disregarded an order and then went to jail, lost their career, was court-martialed, like, they're not going to get bailed out by these lawmakers. They're going to go to jail, right? Like, these are very serious consequences. And I don't know. It just struck me as incredibly callous to try to manipulate service people that way.
Manipulate them. You know what I think it is? I think it is a breath of fresh air that we have government, members of Congress, and legislators for once taking their oath seriously and speaking honestly and frankly to a military that is being led by goons and by hucksters, frauds, villains. I think it's honorable what they did, and I would stand by any single one of them before the corrupt bastards who are ordering these murders.
Two little quick things on this more. Take the legal ramifications out for these Democratic senators. To me, this is a pattern. We'll see what you think about this. There seems to have been a pattern for people within the Trump administration, whether it be there was claims that when it came to him wanting to pull troops in his first term out of Syria, that basically the generals misled him about how many troops were there. There's been other instances where people in the military, in the State Department, etc., have sort of intentionally sabotaged what they thought that he was trying to do. This seems to be an effort by Democrats to sort of wink, wink, nudge, nudge. We want sort of subversion from within, and take the legal ramifications out. Politically, this is a very dangerous game, and this sort of goes into why we're doing this show in the first place. It's not the same as it was in like the mid-90s, where there was sort of a level of respect between the Republicans and Democrats, and you would have never seen something to this degree. Now it just seems that, like, you know, in my perspective, I think it starts with the hatred of Donald Trump. Maybe you have a different perspective.
We are in 2025, and these guys are like still acting as though Trump is the victim all the time. It's like Trump is victimized. Oh, poor Trump. He's not getting the right information. And now the Democrats aren't signaling to the rank and file, but they're on Rob's lights signaling to the more sophisticated generals who are deluding him, right? So all of a sudden we've gone from this is a way to try to convince the rank and file grunt who doesn't know any better that they can just do whatever they want all the time. And now it's like, oh no, this is like a secret signal to the deep state operative, sophisticated generals who thwarted Trump in his first term not to get out of Syria. So stupid.
But it seems that, like, it's all hands on deck, and it's like, look, we feel that we are going against someone who is the great evil orange man, and so, hey, everything's on the table, including wink, wink, nudge, nudge, people subvert his administration, even from within inside the military.
Well, and I think people confuse.
Any pushback on that, Mr. Disaffected Liberal? Any pushback on that, like, total victim narrative, garbage, baseless conspiracy that Democrats are trying to signal to woke generals deep within the deep state on disobeying what Trump is doing? And any comment on that, Mr. Disaffected Liberal? Surely you have something to say about that.
Use their personal conscience and their personal politics with how the military operates.
No, he's just furthering it. He's just saying, you're trying to imply like your personal standards to how the military operates, and you're trying to suggest that it's your personal morality that governs. No, that's what you do. That's what you do when you say there's an American moral proposition that's premised on your objective reading of what God wrote on your heart. That's what you do. You just do, masquerading as objective morality, what you think God wrote on your heart. That's what you do, right? What the Democrats said very clearly was, don't follow manifestly illegal orders. That's what the Democrats were saying. What you're doing, what you are obviously very chip on your shoulder about, is the terrible performance that you had in the debate we had regarding objective morality, where you looked like a clown. That's what you do, is conflate your personal morality with what the law requires or what America means or represents.
Right? Like, I mean, okay, let's say these senators feel very, very strongly about, and they didn't name the issue. You could probably guess it's Venezuela or the National Guard would be the most likely candidates. But let's say they feel really strongly about one or both of those issues. Okay, you feel really strongly about it. I get it. I get that you feel strongly about it. But yeah, I think you're right. In the bygone era of our youth, I don't think anybody would feel comfortable.
I need like a soundboard to do like a kind of little sound effect. I think that like modern audiences want that in a streamer nowadays. Like an explosion sound like Red Bar does, or something to signal that that's where you clap.
Trying to rope in,
at least not publicly, like publicly,
Yeah, I
like
mean,
this. That's what's crazy, right?
It's a pretty shameful thing to do, right? And then you say like, oh, well, we're just saying you have the right to resist.
So let's talk about, so what is confessedly, what is conceitedly the true accurate statements that the Democrats said, where there's no case that they're materially omitting standards that are apparent to everybody in the military, namely the presumption of following orders. What Ryan said, he called that, what did he call it again? He called it callous disregard. He said it's shameful. And let's think about the terms. Just keep that in your mind. Callous disregard, shameful. You're putting all the blame on the grunts, this poor grunts. Look what you're going to do. You're going to send them all to jail. Poor little guys. Absolute court martial for even saying this. So remember those terms and how he characterizes the Democrats' accurate, true information that they're stating versus Trump's lies, inaccurate information, and physical threats of death.
It's a pretty shameful thing to do, right? And then you say like, oh, well, we're just saying you have the right to resist lawful orders. And isn't that technically true? And it's like, yeah, it's a lawyer's lie. It's technically true. But
what's the misleading aspect? He has not elucidated that at all. That is totally opaque because he doesn't have an idea. Because none of these people they're not challenging each other. They don't challenge each other.
You're playing games with the lives of people who you'll never meet. You'll never know, right? They're out there defending the country and you don't give a shit what happens to them.
Defending the country. Do you care about the people who are like being just destroyed by our play, like, and if we're getting the right people and going through, do you care about due process at all? Do you care about their lives? Well, because they're not American, you don't care about their lives?
And that's what made me annoyed about this, where it's just so irresponsible. And you would think that people who are in high elected office in the country would care more about the men and women who defend it, truthfully.
And you see someone in your chat saying, oh, no, not hatred of a fascist. Well, be careful. Like, it depends on the perspective you're looking at. You could very well say that the actions of Barack Obama with his drone strikes were fascist. You could say the ability for him
always this laundry list of bullshit whataboutisms. So let's say there's a wink, wink, nudge, nudge in that video. They would agree then that march peacefully and patriotically. Yeah, no, that's the point that I will try to push incessantly to these people. It's the first thing that I thought about when I was hearing some of this.
To sort of wiretap at least one media member, James Rosen, illustrated him being a fascist presidency. And we see, wasn't it under Obama we had the whistleblower reality winner? That was right? Right. There's all sorts of ramifications if people with inside sort of our intel agencies or military decide on their own. I've decided this person is an authoritarian, they're a fascist, and so therefore I'm allowed to legitimately morally subvert them. It's easy when it's your side. It's easy for the people that assume they're correct to be like, Trump's a fascist, therefore I don't care. And that's the real truth. Most of these people that advocate for this sort of stuff, or what I saw as the blatant illegal lawfare against Trump, if you get down to brass tacks, they're like, this gentleman thinks he's a fascist, I don't care, do whatever you can to him.
But also you got to think about this from the perspective of the soldier, right? You're the soldier, you're in the room, you operate the drone, your job is to push the target to button, right? You're not briefed, you haven't seen the intelligence reports about what's in the boat. In the Obama era, you weren't the guy who was assessing the threat level of the terrorist, right? You're the guy pushing the kill button. That's your job. Now, maybe you say, this guy's a fascist, I'm not going to follow his orders. Okay, well, now you're taking the risk that you go to jail, A. But B, let's set aside that. Let's
look at this invitation to tyranny. He's suggesting, well, as long as you put in some middlemen in between the person who fires the shot, then at no point can we assess culpability or a responsibility to disobey illegal orders. I have no doubt, like, if they're lying to the person who's firing the button or whatever, and if there's no basis for that person to know that what they're doing is illegal, then obviously, I don't think they should disobey an order they have no reason to think is illegal. Is it even, like, needed for me to say that? That if there's no practical way for a soldier to responsibly determine whether or not their order is legal, that they should go forth with a presumption? Why does that even need to be said? Yeah, if there's not a basis to think the order is illegal, then you follow the order. Because there's not a basis to think it's illegal. The obligation would fall upon the personnel for whom it is possible to discern the legality or illegality. If there are no grunts for whom that is reasonable or possible, so be it. There's someone. There is someone who is marking these targets, who has enough knowledge. And if there's not anyone, that's a bigger problem. Then what we're talking about is, and surely given the number of at least reported people who are not engaged in the activity that's being alleged. But again, don't even put that in your head as much, because it doesn't matter even if they are drug traffickers. It doesn't matter even if they are gang members. This is not correct, but someone knows about it, right? And everyone in the top brass knows about it. And now it's public news. So let's not pretend that there's a veil of ignorance that currently exists upon these strikes. People know about these strikes. They're broadcasting them every week on their X feeds. That's all Hegseth does, is PR stuff about what the military is doing, put on his little outfits, his little boots. And so we have to operate in this fake world where we don't obviously understand what's going on.
Set aside that. Let's just say, what if you're wrong? You didn't see the intelligence report. What if that's a boat full of fentanyl? What if that's a boat full of fentanyl?
They don't care.
And
These people don't care. That's
What if it's a boat full of fentanyl? So now who is replacing legality with their personal morality? So maybe I missed this part of law school. Sue me I guess I didn't see where the downstream effects of, like, your product causing damage and bad societal effects to the United States, even if it's illegal, that justified the death penalty or being killed before you have a trial, or even constituted a crime for which the death penalty is available in the modern era. Like, where do we get this notion that if you bring in a bunch of dangerous drugs, you get to be bombed? Here's the real clincher. If these were U.S. citizens importing these drugs, and remember, who knows the fact that I'm about to bring up, at the southern border? Who knows the fact? You know it. Yeah, what if it's a boat full of witches? Natural conclusion of the war on drugs rhetoric. Maybe. These guys are just power worshippers. They worship power. They worship authoritarianism. They don't give a shit about rights. They really don't. They don't give any respect for the rule of law. The boat full of cows example, I mean, we could do that, right? Like, they're importing sodas. What's the leading cause of, like, death is what, like, heart disease? So fatty foods, you bomb them. That's not the example I was going to do, though. The fact that I'm trying to bring up is the vast majority of fentanyl, right, that crosses into the United States is being smuggled in by U.S. citizens across the southern border. So why would you, if you're an airplane, if you're an Air Force person being ordered to kill what the brass knows to be U.S. citizens, not on the seas, but on the road, driving towards the southern border to import those, would you have the power to strike them? Because look at how animated Ryan gets. He's like, oh my God, what if it's a boat full of fentanyl? So? So the fuck what?
People overdose next month, or take it back to the Obama, because I want to be bipartisan here. Like, I was not a supporter of those drone strikes. I'm candidly, I was opposed.
Me too.
But let's say that you said, I'm opposed. This seems illegal. I'm not pushing that button. I'm not going to shoot this man in the Middle East. And then he does another 9/11. Like, this is actually a terrorist, right? Like,
what if he does another 9/11? I guess we can kill anyone, because what if they do another 9/11, right? I guess we can do everything. I guess we should never refuse any order, because it could be the case that there's another 9/11. So why do anything? Like, why ever refuse anything? Clearly, the basis of refusal can't just be what is logically possible to happen in some universe, okay? The metric can't be what could happen, because that is like an infinite set of possibilities that no one can have knowledge about sufficient to make that decision. Clearly, the assessment, as far as the military is concerned, has to do with legality, not their general intuition of bad consequences that could happen. It'd be one thing if you said, well, are likely to happen, maybe then, but like even then, right? Like, it has to be anchored to something that's not just your priors. I thought that was Ryan's whole point, that you can't just import your subjective attitudes as to bad outcomes. It has to be tailored to some sort of legal analysis, that your refusal can't just be based on morality. To the extent that that's an issue, you need to like check your morality at the door, or like, I don't know, if there's like a draft, do the conscientious objector status or whatever that is. I don't even know. Thank you so much for the bits. What if it's a boat full of unborn fetuses? It's a self-contradictory thought process, given what they're saying before of not importing their own morality. And even then, like, the test that they're adopting as a way to dissuade people from following the law in the context of military activities is, well, what if it's another 9/11? What if it is a fentanyl boat? Yeah, so what? I'm assuming that they are fentanyl boats. Even if they are, the purpose of using the military in that context and of doing lethal strikes is not just to benefit the country in whatever way the president feels would be materially beneficial to the country. That's not how I understand the military to be able to legally operate. It's just to do whatever we think is the best interest of the country all the time, no matter what. I thought that we lived in a world of constraint that we were supposed to operate with. I know that America has probably never been wholly faithful to those principles or those norms. So I get it. There's going to be some play on the joints for sure. But here, I mean, this is not even a hard case. This is not a hard case.
That's why the chain of command operates the way it does. It's not up to the soldier in the operations area to make the decision about how to deal with the intelligence that the seniors are looking at.
So that would stand to reason then the soldier should never refuse an order from a superior. If you're in operations, superior says, hey, go shoot that child. That child is an agent of evil. And you're like, yep, it's not my place to guess it. Don't put out these standards if you're unwilling to bite the bullet. Every service person has an independent, self-standing obligation to be faithful to the Constitution and to the law. Now, we can disagree on these different cases, and there will be risks in not following orders. No one has doubted that. But there's no exception to following the Constitution just because you are a grunt. Okay? Now, if it's not apparent, if it's not reasonably determinable whether or not the order is illegal, you grant it. But then that's not what we're talking about then, dipshit.
This is
not fair.
The online commentary that hates Trump. This is what you see. Here's the two comments. Oh, no, not hatred of a fascist. And when I bring up, be careful, people could say the same about Obama. Then lock Obama up. Now, here's a gentleman that thinks Trump's a fascist. Then go do something about it. Instead of recommending that members of the military put their lives on the line, you do something about it. It's easy to...
Who is arguing that we should ask our military members to do something about it with respect to Trump's fascism? Another straw man. I didn't see him arguing that. I think that was a response to like what people are angry about. And now he has This is what they do. These people like graft on responses to make it seem like they're being responsive to what's being talked about, but it's just like word association. And so they find like a word and they graft it onto some other question they ask, and they pretend as though what they're talking about is responsive. Ryan does this all the time, by the way. I notice it. They don't. They're not even listening. Counterpoints emotionally does this sometimes too.
Sit back in your comfy chair online and say, I think the military should disobey lawful or potentially illegal orders and put their lives on the line, right? It's easy, like we've seen other commentators that have like all but called for violence against Trump and supporters. It's easy to rile up your base for that.
More identity politics, more garbage, more meta. This is no different than, that's why I was pissing on Hutch a little bit. It's identity politics. It's saying, oh, because you're a commentator, then we ought not listen to you, instead of dealing with the actual arguments when you guys both think that there are circumstances under which it would be justified for military service people to put their lives, yes, and livelihood and job and career on the line in preserving the Constitution. That's what it means to take an oath. You might have taken your oaths lightly if you took an oath at all. I know Ryan, swore an oath as an officer of the court. Maybe you took your oaths lightly, but oaths carry responsibility and a great weight of responsibility. It's not a trivial undertaking for people who are called to public service. And so what we have gotten in our heads as a country is this appreciation that ought to be extended to people who dedicate their lives to public service, which, fine, that's good. Yeah, public service should be lauded. We should be praising of this kind of service. I'll note, oftentimes it's not extended to public teachers and public bureaucrats, right? It's only extended to the masculine military, that kind of stuff. This kind of attitude of deference is never extended to, your jobber at the DOE, your IRS worker, people who are doing tough and sometimes more unpopular jobs. Though I will note, America has had, even under both of these guys' lights, horrible misadventures in which the military, as part of their duty, needs to be a party to, right? But fine, public service, whatever. But that deference, that respect for public service carries with it an expectation that they're taking their oaths seriously, and they have an obligation and a responsibility and a duty to follow that oath. That oath and that reverence and that respect doesn't extend as far as, oh, do whatever you want all the time because you're just a who. No, it is an awesome responsibility that needs to be understood. That when you commit yourself, for example, to be a police officer, you should have extra obligations on you. Your conduct should be looked at with more scrutiny. That's Uncle Ben, bro. That's basics. That's golden rule. That's first grade shit. With great power comes great responsibility. And as someone who wields deadly force on behalf of the strongest nation on this country, yeah, that carries with it an awesome responsibility to stay faithful to the Constitution. And we've forgotten that as a country somehow. But this is what bootlickers do. These are the people who would take orders. These are the people who would be deniable order takers. And when the chips were down and all their friends were doing something that they knew to be contrary to their oath, they would follow the crowd.
Knowing that you won't suffer the ramifications of that gone wrong. What I'm suggesting is, even when it is presidents that I don't like issuing orders I don't like, it is a fool's errand to recommend to people in our military that they should disobey orders. And that should be doubly true if you're a member of the U.S. Political sphere. You should be very careful before you're recommending this stuff. And the flippancy, which people are riling up the base, is one thing.
Flippancy. It's flippant. Look at where we are, dude. Did you hear any comment, by the way, that like Rob, who this supposed scrutinizer of the intelligence agencies and of military action, have you heard him? Someone who's in principle a libertarian, right? This guy masquerades as a pseudo-libertarian, that he has a libertarian streak in him. Have you heard him at least Ryan? I saw in the comments here. And by the way, I like the stream, guys. I fucking like the stream. If you like the stream, why not like the stream? Show it. It's free. It's free. As are the super chats. Those are free too. You put in whatever denomination you want. You don't have to worry about it. It's not coming out of your bank account. But at least Ryan said, it's a gray area. I saw that comment. I think it's preposterous. Things are obviously illegal. But did you hear Rob say anything? This libertarian about overreaching in terms of the government and the strikes and his concern about the strikes? No. He just says, foreigner, kill. And unlike the robots and the killbots in Futurama, Rob has no preset kill limit where he will stop supporting that.
To disobey orders is another. It's a crime, right?
Well,
if the military does that and they're wrong, it's a crime. You don't care. I get that. Orange man bad, so it's okay. Let other people's lives suffer. Let them spend the rest of their life in Leavenworth. You don't give a shit because orange man bad.
Well, and let's be honest about who they're pitching this message to. This message is pitched to the grunts, right? To the low-level soldiers. Because
he says, even though just a minute ago you were like, this is like when they told Trump that he had already withdrawn from Syria, but they didn't. So it's like a wink, wink, nudge, nudge. So, I mean, I don't know. This is to the grunts? To the grunts, okay. So Ryan knows it's to the grunts. Cool.
there's some chance a low-level soldier is going to see this on social media and go, oh, shit, maybe I'm like this guy. I think this guy's a fascist. I'm going to say no. It's not pitched to the generals. The generals know what the law is. They know that they can resist. Right. You don't need to tell them this. So
it's not pitched to the specifically installed generals after they fired a bunch of people necessarily. I mean, like, I don't know. First of all, what the fuck? The generals know what the law is. Isn't it your contention, Ryan, that no one knows what the law is? Look at these blatant contradictions, right? He says, oh, it's a gray area. No one knows. You're going to take that bet? And he's like, this isn't pitched to the grunts. The generals know what the law is. It's so clear what the law is. There's a blatant contradiction. If you stop to listen to 10 minutes of Ryan talking, you will find at least 5 contradictions. And you all heard him say it, that it's all gray area. Who knows what you're going to put that duty on the grunts? No one knows. Oh, but the generals, they obviously know the law because that's so clear. They don't need to consult. They're well known. The same generals, by the way, who not 10 minutes ago, Rob was saying these are the people who are selling out Trump and the ones who are disobeying orders and the ones who weren't following the law. I'm not so sure, actually, that a general is going to know what is the best determiner for what the law is all the time. You know, that doesn't mean he doesn't have a self-standing obligation, or they or she, to follow the law. Would never say that. Generals also swear an oath to the Constitution, and so unfortunately, for better or worse, not all of them can have the same kind of legal training that lawyers specifically do. Yeah.
Generals. The generals know what the law is. They know that they can resist. Right. You don't need to tell them this. So this
he means in terms of the obligation not to follow illegal orders. That is already known. But if that is known by the generals, right? So understand that another potential contradiction. If that is known to the generals, why would we assume that the presumption on following orders isn't known by the grunts? Right? He's willing to say, oh, obviously it's not pitched to the generals because they already know they have an obligation not to follow illegal orders. Okay, but your whole case that this is materially misleading is that the grunts don't know that they have an obligation to follow orders. Make it make sense.
Directly to the ears of the people who don't have enough information to make the decision in a way that won't jeopardize the lives of their livelihood and families. You know, if there's a general who thinks an order is unlawful, I have no doubt that they are well positioned to push back and say, no, I don't think we can do that.
Oh, really?
This is. I think it's an illegal order and I can't follow it. I don't think
whatever that is, not working right now because we're murdering people without any justification, not even a plausible justification. Say what you want about the strike from Biden. It killed a bunch of innocent people in Afghanistan after the, I think it was like a ISIS-K bombing near the airport that killed a bunch of service members. And then Biden, there was a plan to bomb an area that they thought was containing terrorists and a bunch of baddies, and it turned out to be like a family and totally innocent people. At a bare minimum, in that situation, the allegation was that these were insurgents that are engaged in combat against the United States on a war which was explicitly authorized by the Congress.
I think generals need to be reminded of this. I think
It wasn't like, oh, we think these are drug dealers in Afghanistan, so we're going to kill them. Because you could make that argument, right? Like, isn't there like heroin fields and poppy fields or whatever in Afghanistan? Well, some of that's going to end up in America. So why not just bomb them at the fucking source? We're preventing the loss of life in America.
Sure. No, right? So it just strikes me as a deeply unfair way to message this issue, which
It's unfair. Unfair to whom? Unfair to whom? To whom is it unfair? The grunts on the ground. It's unfair to tell them what is true. That's unfair. That's unfair. I mean, we're in a crazy world right now.
Trump the moral high ground if he had just
Look at this. Look at this. Thank you so much for the super chat, the free super chat for $5. This is exactly what happened. The general in charge of the Caribbean Sea was just resigned because he was given unlawful orders, allegedly. Right, and I think that they have an obligation to resign. If they're being told to break the law, they have to resign. Pisco, you don't understand. The fentanyl being brought by those Venezuelans enough to kill 400 million Americans. we did like I think I did a short about that. They do these fentanyl busts, and they're like, we just saved the entire population of our country. Can you believe it? They saved America. And look what he said. This is how he criticizes Trump, right? If Trump had just taken the win, if he had just, but he did this, he said these little things, and now look how he downplays it.
now shot for Trump the moral high ground.
Trump would have the moral high ground. He would have the moral high ground, but then
if he had just
100 bits. Thank you, Eddie Bombay. Is there an argument for the response? Maybe there's evidence of the drugs on the boat, but it's classified, so it wouldn't be released to the public. But the issue isn't classification, right? The issue is what the allegation is. The allegation is no more that they are drug traffickers, not that they are engaged in combat against the United States, nor could it be. I mean, there's just nothing there. So I take seriously the allegation, the notion that there's classified information, and that's why they can't like release specific stuff about it. But you don't need to. That's not even something that you should consider, because at most, right? At most, it's alleging that they're drug traffickers, which is not a basis to conduct war operations. Everyone is going hard on Erica Kirk's outfits. What is going on, folks? Can we leave this widow alone? What has she done to you? This widow's cries will echo like a battle cry across the flame-scarred nations of the earth. Okay, Skeletor. I mean, Jesus Christ.
We're
now
almost
shut for just take a breath before you post something. Like, it was so frustrating to watch him spin out on this.
So the closest, other than actual military codes, the closest in the legal code that I could find outside the scope of, can you explain this very quick? I have a general understanding of this, but there is a separate amount of legal issues that comes with being a member of the military. So there's legal codes unique to being a member of the military, correct?
Yeah, you're subject to the military code of justice, and then you're subject to it's called like the manual of courts martial, basically. So there's the list of the offenses that you can get court-martialed for, and this is where when I'm talking about the fact that you have a duty to disobey a manifestly unlawful order, the right but not the duty to disobey an unlawful order, and that there's a presumption of lawfulness. This is all directly from the Uniform Code of Military Justice, and
so they quoted directly from the Uniform Code of Military Justice, UCMJ, whatever. So they just set the legal standard. And you say, it's so unfair. It's so unfair to these poor. Will someone think of the soldiers? They quoted directly from their handbook. What did is it Kiefer Sutherland say in A Few Good Men? I have two books on my nightstand, Lieutenant. The Marine Code of Conduct and the King James Bible. What does he say? The only superior officers I recognize is my officer, Colonel Jessup, and the Lord our God. Hang on. Fuck, what was it? What's this guy's name? Lieutenant. Lieutenant something. Fuck, I don't know. I lost interest.
The the articles for court martial, and this is spelled out, and these are not civilian courts. Like, if you violate an order, you're going to be tried before a military tribunal, and the military tribunal is going to be asking very different questions. Like, if a police officer told me to do something and I didn't do it, I might get an obstruction charge. It's like there's situations where you have to follow order, but for a soldier to disobey an order, that's already convictable, right? You don't need anything else. That by itself, that is a convictable.
Correct,
offense.
and that.
Does anyone dispute that? Is anyone unaware of that? Does anyone think that that's not the case? It's like, did you know that you can actually get in trouble for not following an order if you're in the military? It's like, well, did you know that if you kill someone illegally, you could get in trouble? Like, this is lost on our soldiers. They're poor soldiers. They don't know that.
Something that us as civilians, we're allowed to have opinions and not do things. It's a different level, right? We're not going to be convicted under that. Now, this is the only law I could see that arguably these Democrat senators were breaking. And I don't know if you've seen this. So this is USC 2387. And it says, whoever with intent to interfere with, impair, or influence the loyalty, morale, or discipline of the military or naval forces of the United States advises, counsels, urges, or in any manner causes, or attempts to cause insubordination, disloyal, immunity, refusal of duty by any member of the military or naval forces of the United States, or distributes or attempts to distribute any written, printed matter, blah, 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 shall be fined under this title or prison not more than 10 years or both, and shall be ineligible for employment by the United States or any department agency thereof for 5 years next following the conviction. Do you think?
So what's the first words out of your mouth after this? If you're trying to argue whether or not this would apply to the statements of the Democrats. Ryan's going to say intent, and that, of course, obviously would not be shown here. They would say, we're not trying to attempt to cause insubordination. It is not insubordination to refuse to follow an unlawful order. So, obviously, the intent one is whatever. But the first thing out of my mouth would be, Brandenburg, First Amendment. These are not, people in active service or whatever. And second, it's obviously protected speech. There is no way that, even if it were conceitedly advocating illegal action, this stuff won't do. I can say right now, yeah, if you're a military member, not only should you follow or refuse to follow illegal orders, not only should you refuse to follow manifestly illegal orders, you should also refuse to follow legal orders. If I said that, who thinks that they could charge me with a crime? Legally in this country. Obviously, they can try to do whatever they want. If you said, yes, you're a sap, you don't know the case law. That used to be our First Amendment doctrine. We're like advocating people not sign up for the draft, mere advocacy of illegal things, that this was itself a crime. That is no longer the case. It's called the First Amendment. And these guys masquerade. This guy like masquerades as fire guy, right? I think the first thing out of your mouth should be, well, first of all, we have a threshold question of First Amendment. Even if it were the case that they were advocating for illegal things such as insubordination, whether or not that could be constitutionally applied is doubtful at best. At best. Thank you for the follow. Guys, when you follow the channel, you're sticking it to the man. You're doing something for your country. And I want every single follower to know, if you follow today, you're part of an elite class.
That these Democratic senators have risen to the level of potentially being charged under this law?
Probably not. Probably. I mean, charged? You could charge them. Like, I'm sure, I'm relatively certain you could get this past a grand jury because a grand jury is a fairly low bar. But in terms of getting a conviction, I don't think so. Because while I do think it's fair to criticize them because the implication of what they said, wink, wink, nudge, nudge, there's unlawful orders you should be resisting. What the key.
That's the wink, wink, nudge, nudge, Ryan. that you should be resisting unlawful orders right now, even if that was their intent, right? Like, imagine that you say, like, my intent, I'm advocating that you do something like that I think is illegal, but is actually turns out is illegal. What's the crime there? What is illegal is imminent calls for lawless action. That absolutely is punishable. We don't have imminence here in any sense of it. You don't have the specific intent for the call to lawless action. And yeah, it would fall apart.
The word there is with intent, right? So you have to intend for people to disobey an order. And I'm not really sure you could prove that here, right? Because all they said was, you should disobey, you have the right to disobey an unlawful order. And if you look at all the military training manuals, it's going to say the exact same thing, right? Like, because that's true. It is a correct statement of the law. I think the context is clear, but I think they were very careful, and that was a legally like lawyers reviewed that statement, and they didn't make it off the cuff. I think that actually would be very difficult to convict for.
I agree in the sense it would be difficult to convict. I'd like to see them bring the charges anyways, because I think there needs to be
I'd like to see them bring charges for a case that they can't convict. So says Rob. I'd like them to bring show charges on a case they can't convict, says Rob.
dissuasion from this sort of thing happening in the
To
future.
dissuade lawful activity, right? We want to use the criminal justice system, charge people with crimes that they almost certainly can't convict on, to dissuade lawful conduct. This guy, politically, interpersonally, whatever, politically, scumbag, total scumbag. He's saying, he's open about it. Use the criminal process in a case that you're not going to be able to convict, to dissuade people from doing legal things. That's what Rob Noor says.
From either side, and I think it's clear what their intent was. However, me thinking that it's clear is different than proving it beyond a reasonable doubt, which would be necessary for a conviction. So I don't know. I can understand if they don't bring these charges, but I think at some point there has to be some sort of ramifications. And as we've learned with Trump and all of his associates, the process is the punishment. And so if they just,
You know what I say? Bring it on. Bring it on. Those senators are not the only ones. Those of you who are in the military, you need to, and you have an obligation to consider the legality of your conduct. Always, obviously. Be aware of the ramifications if you disobey and it's wrong, but you absolutely do not have to follow orders that are illegal. Bring it on. If you want to charge these senators, make them martyrs. Waste your time. Bring it on.
decided to bring charges, and they would be lawfully within their right, I think, to go to a grand jury, maybe potentially having to suffer through the embarrassment would be worth it. Now, I guess
Make them suffer the embarrassment, he says. So that is, by the way, a definitionally improper basis to bring a charge, to impose embarrassment. He's saying, I want them to charge for the purpose of embarrassing them. Did you hear that? He's outwardly saying, I want a political prosecution. I want political prosecutions, and I want prosecutions to publicly embarrass these people who I think did a bad thing. These people. And do we have a peep from our attorney friend, our disaffected liberal? Hey, that seems kind of like a fucked up way to abuse the awesome prosecution power of the Department of Justice. Any peep from our friend here? Let's see. Maybe I'm wrong. I could be wrong. I didn't watch the whole thing.
counter to that would be, yeah, but does this hurt Trump's political capital? And if they're going after
Does this hurt political capital? So look at what Rob is doing, right? What is Rob weighing? Rob is weighing whether it's politically smart to bring the charges. He's saying you should decide on whether to bring these charges on your intuition, Trump, about whether it will reduce your political capital and whether that's offset by the benefit of embarrassing your political rivals. Need I say anything more? And this bloviating asshole spent the entirety of Biden's administration talking about the politicization of the DOJ, that it's the number one problem of all time. And he's out here saying that the investigations that we run and whether we bring charges should be done based on a calculus with regard to the political capital of Trump and the embarrassment inflicted upon his rivals. And this guy's lecturing all of his audience about the politicization of DOJ and lawfare. They never gave a shit about it. They never cared about it, even 1%. It's a self-report because that's what they want. They want lawfare, and they want to impose political punishments on their rivals using the prosecution authorities to do so. Do we have a peep from our disaffected liberal attorney friend? Maybe you would have something to say about such a profound insult to the norms of criminal law and the awesome power of the DOJ.
For legitimate criminals like potentially James Comey, etc., does this hurt perceptually that because it seems like they're just going after anyone that's an opponent?
Well,
so I can see it both ways.
I can see it both ways, and he's admitting and conceding the political rationale.
We're going to get into this more later, but the Trump administration needs to be careful because they've stepped on some legal rakes recently, and
that's an understatement. But no objection here to what Rob is doing here, which is openly weighing the wisdom of these prosecution based on their political impact. Nothing to say, no objection. Like, wait a second, Rob, are you considering that like the prosecution should rest on political justifications and what is best in terms of optics for Trump? That's what you're basing your not a single. No, he's like, well, they have to be careful because they stepped on some rakes. That is, I would say, a euphemistic, to say the least. It is, some might say, an outright distortion. Frankly, I mean, I would be in the latter camp. An outright distortion. Stepped on some rakes. How about blatantly violating court orders? How about manifestly undermining the Constitution? How about engaging in the most political prosecutions in the history of the Republic?
it makes them look incompetent, right? And
look, and he does it too. He's like, the problem here is the appearance of incompetence. That's the issue with these legal, like what they're doing. Isn't the substance of the legal rakes they're stepping on. That is to say, and by the way, what does he mean by these legal rakes? Just the norm against political prosecution, just the due process clause, just the First Amendment, just the Fourth Amendment in the context of the Comey stuff, the Fifth Amendment in the context of the Comey stuff, like basically everything in the context of the Comey stuff. That's the legal rakes that he's referencing here. And what's the problem? They risk looking very incompetent. Yeah, I would say that that's a problem. Honestly, though, it might even be a benefit in the long run that we're saved by the worst of the administration because of how incompetent they actually are. But that's I would put that on the lower end of the issues. Maybe the substantive legal violations, the authoritarianism, the violations, maybe those weigh a little bit heavier, and the things that you maybe want to talk about first, to say nothing of the First Amendment, which you haven't talked about at all yet. And this very much is speech. And what's being proposed are political speech crimes. Surely you're going to bring up, he is going to bring up Brandenburg, so give him credit there. But I just note what the first thing that he says and what he doesn't respond to, which is this tyrannical authoritarian dribble you just heard. Now, if you're listening to Rob, you might get lulled into his cadence and just like go along for the ride. But if you actually stop to like listen to the ideas he's saying, this is profoundly corrupt and authoritarian.
that does hurt your perception, right? If you're saying I'm going to do X and we do Y, like imagine how much better they'd be if they had never promised the Epstein files and hadn't.
And on to the Epstein files about the political ramifications herein. So essentially co-opting and bolstering the worries and fears that Rob has with the prosecution, which were all optical by pointing to the Epstein files. Rob didn't say, well, I'm concerned that this would overstep First Amendment rights, me, the libertarian. He didn't say, I'm concerned about whether or not it's a worthy use of prosecutorial authority to go after a case we know is very unlikely to succeed in a conviction. Seems to undermine the very, the basis of evidence that we'd want in any kind of prosecution going forward, is for there to be a standard of proof, which is basically just charge. Can we get it through grand jury? That's all we need. That's usually seen as bad. But rather than fight him on that, he is just like, yeah, like You're right. There are some concerns about optics.
handed out those fucking white binders, right?
Yep.
The binders.
It makes them look incompetent, and it makes them look like they're hiding something. We're going to get into Comey later, but they promised to prosecute Comey. Endless rake stepping. And to me,
rake stepping for the Comey case. The Comey case is an unconstitutional case. It's abuse, the likes of which we have never seen. It's insane. Rake stepping, he calls it.
Trump could have claimed the moral high ground here if he was a little bit less impulsive. Like if instead of the statement, and we'll get into this, but he called them seditious and he said the penalty is death, neither of which is true. But if he had said instead,
any comment on that in terms of whether or not you think that this is irresponsible? Whether or not you think it's a statement that is immoral, maybe? You basically went off on a tear on these Democratic senators for being so irresponsible. You're like, yeah, I guess Trump said that they should all be executed, and they did things they obviously didn't do, and they did sedition. I guess that. Any normative assessment here from Ryan?
it's something like, we have the best military in the world, the best trained military in the world. They know exactly what the laws of the military are and the rules of the military are. And I'll tell you what.
Did he give this good faith, by the way, to the Democrats? Be like, oh wait, I kind of agree with what they're getting at, but like they could have made this statement a little better if they just more forcefully talked about the presumption of legality of the orders. Did he do that, or was he like, this is so irresponsible, bro? I can't believe I'm
If you six were in the military still, you'd be court-martialed for that. Right? Like,
See, I would have even gone further. If Trump would have said, look, you're possibly violating, USC 2387, fine. But the problem is, and this is why I wanted to bring this law up, is Trump claimed that they were seditious, which has a very specific legal term. It's one thing if I say they're seditious. It's another thing if the president of the United States says it, right?
And know what he says there. A very specific legal definition of sedition. Interesting. Very, very, very specific.
That's different to being an online person using the term as a layman. And you can say, well, Trump's not a lawyer. He's sort of using it as a layman. Yeah, but he is the president. And so you have to, you should choose your words more carefully, particularly if it's in writing.
You should choose your words more carefully. That's all they have to say about it. These senators should be executed. He's like, honey, can you come down? Donald, did you say that U.S. Democratic senators should be executed for sedition? Yeah, you. So you might want to choose your honey. I'm not trying to. Just for your own benefit. I think you would lose the moral high ground. Really, it would be better for you if you didn't say that. That's the only reason I say it. But yeah, just think about that next time. We are living in a fantasy. We're living in psycho world where 30% of the country seems to be under the sway of these bullshit artists who fundamentally live in different realities. They are living in the upside down world. Up is down, down is up. Everything is inverse. White is black, black is white. And we have to breathe and live and work in the same places as these people who are unhinged.
I want to bring up the code for sedition here because I think we're both in agreement on this. This is not sedition.
No.
Despite the fact that neither of us like what the Democrats did, nor is the penalty for sedition the death penalty, right?
I mean, we used to have robust sedition laws in this country. They were struck down because they violate free speech.
The sedition laws violated the free speech. So notice this is when Brandenburg probably comes in, is with respect to the sedition laws that used to exist. Let's see if he applies Brandenburg to the statements by the Democrats.
The idea is that back in the old days, you could commit sedition just by saying something. Just saying, I hate the government, let's burn it all down. Oh, okay, you're opposed to the government? Sedition. These days, we have a much more robust First
Mr. Mandela effects. I cannot stress this anymore. Nobody's listening to Rob Nor except you. That's just fundamentally not true. He's, to the extent that anyone's listening to me, which is, I know it's a small audience, he's just as big as me. So it's not like I am significantly bigger than Rob. There are at least people who are listening to him. People listen to Andrew Wilson, and he's closely affiliated with Andrew Wilson, rated them all the time. He, is not currently very big, not currently very well known. But even if he wasn't, I find this entertaining for myself, but also a nice contrast for my audience to see what these different archetypes are saying, right? On the one hand, you have the constant Trump dick sucks, and then these enlightened centrist types who are effectively the same thing. And so I find that contrast, even if no one were listening to them, effective to demonstrate what I think are broader illusions and arguments that are found in the world. So I just don't see why it's relevant that he's not like him specifically listened to. I'm talking about a broader set of actors, not just Rob, obviously.
Amendment. And even if you wrote a law like that, it would be unconstitutional. There has to be, and I think it says it here, if two or more persons in any state or territory or any place subject to the jurisdiction of the United States conspire to overthrow, put down by force, destroy the government, so sedition, but they have to take an affirmative step.
Yes, and the force part I think is what's important. To oppose by force the authority thereof, or by force to prevent, hinder, or delay. That force part's what there's just saying, hey, you have the right to refuse an illegal order.
What Ryan said about the substantial step or whatever the conspiracy test is, that's also important. They're both important, but yeah, it's clearly not sedition.
Isn't attempting to overthrow or undermine the government by force. It's not that. And so therefore, and I'll say this, again, not a lawyer, but I do know this. The free speech laws as we see them in the United States and our free speech protections are vastly more robust than they were when the founding fathers.
This is true.
Others sort of wrote the First Amendment. And like, I think the courts have ruled that way. You can almost see, it'd be interesting to just do an entire show on just sort of what free speech used to look like circa founding fathers, to how that's changed. And it is very much, you used to be able to be charged with sedition and stuff for things that were far more loose. Now, it sort of made sense. And by the way, this is the same as the term insurrection, right? And so when we look at sort of...
this is the same as the term insurrection. He can't prove that. Right? So we have demonstrable evidence that the First Amendment laws have become stronger over time. We have proof of that. What is the proof of that? Look at the case law, where the Supreme Court explicitly says that. Look at the case law that overturns the prior Schneck decision. And then the dissent of Abrams by Justice Holmes. Later on to cases like Gitlow, which seem to sustain decently broad sedition laws. And then finally, when Brandenburg overturns it, and that's been the understanding since. And the additional categories of protected speech that have emerged in that time. There's actually evidence at that point. Rob, because he's feeling threatened, because he pointed to a specific legal meaning of sedition, sufficient enough for him to be like, oh, this is clearly not sedition. Feeling a little bit potentially vulnerable on insurrection. Now it says, oh, insurrection is like for speech. But where's the evidence that the definition of insurrection has narrowed at all? Like, what is that? What is that evidence that it's narrowed?
And by the way, this is the same as the term insurrection, right? And so when we look at sort of charging Trump with insurrection and, Section 3.
Trump was not charged with insurrection.
The 14th Amendment and this and that. I would argue that back in the day, like
you would argue
Civil War, when we were still worried about sort of what Britain was going to do in the United States, and they would still had their tendrils in, and then Civil War, where you literally had a war in the Union, they were far more concerned about
things. And nods from Ryan. They were far more concerned about insurrection. Is that an argument that the definition of insurrection has legally become more narrow? The argument about what we're concerned about, that is not proving your point that legally the definition of insurrection has become more narrow. These guys, they don't think. They can't think.
Things like insurrection, sedition, because it was fresh on everyone's mind, and we saw the consequences.
And look at the originalists nodding along. The originalists. Does anyone know what originalism is supposed to be about? I don't see anyone typing. Losers? No. It's about looking at the historical meaning of terms, like the freedom of speech, like going back in time, like what the Second Amendment. What are these originalists doing? Like, oh, you need to find a parody law from back in the day. And Ryan is just nodding along, saying, yes, these terms mean it's a living document. So insurrection, it's a living document. So that's what we're doing here. So unprincipled. So I have to pretend that originalism matters to anyone when the Supreme Court, on a nearly monthly basis, undermines that framework that they themselves trumpet as the de facto objective framework. And you have people like Ryan, likewise, saying originalism is what judicial decisions are. It necessarily, objectively is that. And nodding along with Rob saying, oh, it's loosey-goosey. Who's to say? It's because they were more concerned back at the time of the framing, now we can change what insurrection means now because we're less concerned. Living constitutionalists, Rob Brown. Does it even occur to them the blatant contradictions in their espoused philosophies? Do they have any principles whatsoever? And also, this isn't proving your point. There are a lot of things that are less of note now versus the founding generation. For example, the quartering of troops. Not really a huge concern, really, against until Trump 2.0. I don't know what the hell's going to happen. Maybe we're going to need another Third Amendment class one of these days, depending on how far Trump is willing to go on this shit. But at least for now, that's not really an issue. Does that mean that the definition of quartering of troops has gotten more narrow because hasn't come up as much, because there's been less of them, and because it's not been applied nearly as much? That means the quartering of troops doesn't mean what it meant from a legal perspective, and we shouldn't look to the founding generation to understand what these terms meant? I thought we were doing originalism. I'm sorry. I thought that originalists won the argument, and I thought that that's what we were supposed to be doing. But he's not even making that. I mean, he's not even making a legal argument at all. He's just saying, oh, it's my vibes. I would argue that it mattered to them back in the day more, and therefore it's just like the free speech situation where you can literally look at the case law changing over time and point to the decisions, the specific decisions that change the doctrine, and say it's just like that with insurrection. These guys think they're good debaters.
Consequences. Now, we haven't really enforced these laws, and they've kind of been reinterpreted either through...
How have they been reinterpreted? Either through what?
Just strict non-enforcement.
So they've been reinterpreted through non-enforcement. Silly me. I thought it was the judicial department, that it was their job, emphatically the province duty of the judicial department to say what the law is. So now the president even gets to decide what the law means by his non-enforcement. Well, then I guess bribery is legal, because when the fuck is Trump going to enforce that? Second of all, there's another potential inference you could draw from non-enforcement. Not that the definition has got more narrow, but that insurrections have become less common, or that there are other legal avenues to pursue other than insurrection, which has more specific mens rea components and attendant circumstances that aren't present for simple conspiracy charges or assault charges or obstruction charges. One of the reasons why Jack Smith, I thought it was a bullshit that he should have charged it, but there are practical reasons why it's easier to bring a charge for other things. And so the availability of other instruments, the less frequency of insurrections, could explain the absence of insurrection charges throughout this time. But no, the non-enforcement of insurrection, that means they reinterpreted what insurrection meant. Garbage. Because he can't point to any definition of insurrection. He hasn't landed on a single one that would make sense even of the Civil War. And still, we are in 2025, and he is stun-locked by his inability to run a simple semantic analysis on a term that did have a standard legal definition in the founding generation. And even if he didn't want to go with that legal definition, there are dictionary definitions that he could draw from. He doesn't do it because he's scared, because he knows he called BLM insurrections before Jan 6, and he has no way to justify his calling students preventing a speaker from accessing a particular building. He said that was an insurrection. I have all the clips of it. But now he he has to come later on and be, I don't really know. I don't know. Who's to say? The non-enforcement of this bullshit is all a fugazi.
Or literally, there have been court cases brought up to say, well, wait a minute. We're going to have more robust free speech protection.
So that's okay. So the only thing he has for insurrection is this notion that non-enforcement changed the definition of insurrection. I just explained to you why that's garbage, that there are other more reasonable inferences as to why insurrection convictions became less common in time, and that there have been no judicial opinions that have narrowed it in any respect. And so the only thing he has is like his own priors, as though he has done an exhaustive study on the different cases of insurrection throughout the course of the late 19th and early 20th century. He doesn't have any of that research done. He didn't really work on it that hard. He just kind of wings it. That's his vibes. Then he goes back to the First Amendment case, which is demonstrable.
So I don't think that, I think it is 100% completely erroneous for Trump to imply that this meets the legal bar for sedition. I don't even think it's anywhere close.
No, it's not. And I mean, to get anywhere close to it, you would need to have, first you need to have some kind of overt.
So note the different standard there. The double standard here. So when it comes to Democrats saying legally correct and true things that are like obviously true, they are so angry and so exaggerated in their response. But when it comes to Trump getting the law wrong on sedition, admittedly wrong, clearly wrong, not even close, says Rob, implying that the punishment should be death on an issue of law that they're wrong about, it's like, yeah, he's wrong. Do you see the double standard? Do you see this bullshit in front of you? Kind of crazy.
Act, right? Like someone's actually taking a step to overthrow the government. Like it's not enough just to talk about it. And even if you were going that direction, you'd still have the Brandenburg standard. You'd still have to get past the fact that actual incitement to violence is a tough standard. It's not enough just to kind of casually say a carefully worded statement that reminds people of their rights. And I think that this is why I found it so frustrating that Trump said what he said, because
I was frustrated. I was so frustrated.
I get the impulse.
It's
right?
frustrating. It's frustrating. Oh, it's so frustrating.
Like you're the commander in chief, and people who are ex-military are telling your service people to disobey you. Like that's, it's going to, that's going to be incredibly frustrating. Like you're going to get riled up by that, but it wasn't a measured response. And
it wasn't measured. He's basically justifying, like, of course you would be unhinged if someone would say like a correct thing. Of course, any president would be like unhinged and angry, irate at someone saying something true and correct and obvious. So it wasn't a measured response. Jesus fucking envy.
I really think he could have claimed the moral high ground here, and he could have made them look very stupid. But instead,
he could have.
He kind of flew off the handle, and now he looks like the one who's saying reckless things. And that was the bait, right? That was the bait.
And look at how he phrased it. He looks like he's the one saying reckless things. It's really the Democrats saying reckless things, but Trump now looks like he's the one saying reckless things. This is like abuser tactics, bro.
Trap. They had a careful statement, and they were hoping to inspire a reckless response, and that's what they got.
Yeah, and I mean, it's funny how I think both sides. Now, ultimately, do I think that this...
I love how the intent of the Democrats keep changing. On the one hand, for one of Ryan's tellings, he's like, their specific intent is to go after the grunts and to go after our poor, dumb service members. That's Ryan's telling of it. These service members who've never been taught that orders are important. And then Rob chimes in and is like, oh, the target might be, it's like those generals that refuse to get out of Syria. So that's the target. And now it's like, oh, the intent was to provoke a insane response from Trump. That's what they were trying to do, and they were successful at it. The story keeps changing. Okay, so is it bait? Is it genuine calls for them to violate orders in these bombing runs? Is it aimed at generals to undermine Trump? Pick a story. You don't have evidence for any of it.
Harms Trump that much? No, not in the grand scheme of things. And this is, I understand Democrats, they're going to jump all over me for saying this, but the bar for Trump is lower than other presidents and politicians because he says so much.
No, I'm not gonna jump on you for saying that, Rob. It's true. You don't hold Trump to anything approaching a workable standard for the top guy in the world. He's the most important guy in the world with the most amount of power in the world. And so why would I jump on you for something that where you're just like out there and admitting that you hold him to no standard at all? Yes, we all know that. We've been saying that for years. That yes, it's a literal double standard. When you say that Trump has a lower bar and everyone else has a higher bar, you're saying there's a literal double standard and that's just the reality of it. And that you're holding Democrats to a higher standard than Republicans, even though, or at least Trump, even though Trump holds higher office and is directly in charge of these people and has operational control. But no, we're not going to jump on you for saying that because we've been saying that that's your position all the time. We're like gratified and relieved that you would admit it.
Shit like this, right? And this is Trump from when he came down that escalator. He's the type.
I love that. Imagine if you got away for like, oh, you know, Biden's all whatever they think Biden did. Well, that's just Biden. Ever since Biden was Biden, Biden was Biden. Like this tautological statement that he is the way he is. Yeah, Biden is Biden. Trump is Trump. Okay? Are we supposed to like, what are you saying that's informative? Yeah, Trump is the way he is. But implied in that is like a normative that like the bar is lower and that's okay. Or like that we should accept a lower bar for the president given that Trump is Trump. Why would that follow? There's a tautology. Trump is Trump, therefore lower standard.
Dude, he'll call a country a shithole country, right? Like, so when he talks like this, it's almost built in the cake, right? It's like, yeah, you get it. This is how Trump talks. But again, I wish that he would have.
Yeah, you get it. That's how Joe Biden is. He just does what like you would never, ever, ever, ever. It's so, I mean, it's an admitted double standard. He said before that he's a hypocrite. I don't think, I'm not going to do too much more of this because it just is never ending with these guys. They're clowns.
Approach it. I think that what it does is, like, there are people on my side, they're like, good, fuck it brought attention to this, and you should be hyperbolic, because fuck them, they deserve it. I don't even disagree with that. However, to me, it sort of illustrates a lack of sort of treating this with the seriousness that it deserves. Because he should have met with his team and been like, what the fuck are these Democrats doing? I want an immediate investigation, right? Let's not talk about charges. The bar's there for an investigation. Did they collaborate? Are they in communications with people in the military? Like suggesting with communications behind the scene, look, if he orders you deployed to Chicago, disobey. That's different. Now all of a sudden we have a higher standard. And so if he's talking in a legally technical correct manner, to me that signals even more the severity of this, and I wish I would have seen it. As such, he says this, and then what's worse is if he would have just said it's sedition, I don't think anyone would have gave a shit, except maybe weird lawyers like you and weird people like me that like do this stuff online. But most people wouldn't have gave a shit. It was the second part. That was basically like, it's the death penalty, and then retweeting people that were basically like, you know, hang them. This is what needs to happen. Now you're approaching a thing where the average person takes note of it because it's like, is Trump really suggesting that people...
Do you take note of it? This is the kind of passing off the buck stuff that like I couldn't stomach. Yesterday in the conversation about Schumer, it's this kind of like relativistic frame of mind when that's not what we're asking. We're not asking like, do you understand why Mitch McConnell might think this? Or do you understand why Schumer might think it makes sense for this or that? Do you understand why an average person might be more put on? Do you take pause? Is this unhinged? You had no problem condemning the statements of the Democrats. Let's see some fire.
Will be executed that are against him in the Democratic Party. And I think that that's dangerous and stupid in the sense of it harms him politically.
Well, this is why I get so frustrated with the continued employment of Pam Bondi, because you...
Oh my God! No way he's doing this meme. No way. I didn't see this.
Legal minds, you know, drop me a line. But like you've got to have...
Did he just say, let me be AG?
Is watching, and you need some legal minds, you know, drop me a line. But
let me work for this administration. You know what? You probably fit in well because, like, Jesus Christ, you're willing to defend any corruption.
But like, you've got to have lawyers of a really high caliber who, when you have an idea, you're like, that's seditious. I'm going to put the hammer down on these motherfuckers. Then you go, holy shit, I've got a great lawyer who I can run this by. And
the year is 2025. I must say it is current year. Ryan Mullally says, you know why Pam Bondi needs to be fired? Because she doesn't challenge him. because what you need is an attorney general that's going to lay the law down. And when you say something, they're going to be like, no, sir, you can't do that. No, sir, that isn't correct. It is current year. And Ryan thinks that Trump is interested in such an attorney general, that he would give a shit whether an attorney general would tell him, yeah, that's against the law. Like, that stopped him before from firing people and just picking lawyers that are willing to tell him what he wants to hear. That's the story of the election theft he tried, was picking up losers, unhinged people, psychos. Remember Sidney Powell? Remember, who's this other guy? He, oh my God, I forget his name. I think he had blonde hair. He tried to do the tan meme. You guys know what I'm talking about. Giuliani, though, obviously. Like, these people, hand-selected crazy people. Eastman is another example. That's not who I'm thinking of, though. Not Eastman. I'm thinking of, not Chesbro. These are all great examples. Lynn Wood. I think that's his name. Remember Lynn Wood? Sidney Powell, Lynn Wood, Eastman, yeah, all these people. Right? He was hand-selecting Jen Ellis, people who are going to give him what he wants. And so Bondi is not the reason Trump is unhinged. Trump is the reason Trump is unhinged. And you have these people who should know better, who are so naive as to think at this stage, after 10 years, a decade of our life being wasted thinking about the desires of this one person, this degenerate orangutan who we've elected to high office, that after 10 years of this nonsense, that this guy is like a genuine person looking for pushback and different push and pull. No, he wants to be flattered and he wants to get people to do what he wants. And so he picked Bondi, and he's not firing Bondi because Bondi does that. So why would he fire Bondi? The only reason they're in the mess with Lindsey Halligan and the appointment thing is because Trump wanted Halligan appointed. Trump asked for it. So Bondi, in doing what she did with Halligan, she could have done it more strategically or whatever, but fundamentally, the problem there isn't Bondi's. It's Trump demanding that Halligan be instituted as interim U.S. attorney and for her to bring the charges that week. But low IQ people, and unfortunately, maybe even higher, potentially higher IQ people like Ryan, who are, I guess, still naive or still in this la la land that Trump is, like, they're going to pin it on Bondi. Same thing, by the way, with the Epstein files. Bondi's just doing what she's told on Epstein. All the shiftiness and the lies and doublespeak, fundamentally that flows from Trump, not from Bondi. If anything, I say this often now, I kind of feel bad for Bondi in the narrow sense on the point about the Epstein list is on my desk. I really do think she's being taken out of context there. Because I don't think that, even though the question and answer are literal, and I can understand why people would take the literal question and answer, it doesn't really seem that she's trying to characterize the evidence in front of her in any significant respect. She just claims haven't even seen it. And so people who are like, oh, she said there was a list, an incriminating client list. Like, how could she have known that in advance if she's saying, I haven't read it? So I'm a little sympathetic there, but she was excoriated for that. She's just doing what the administration is. She's an outgrowth of Trump. And frankly, at this point, it's not even just Trump, it's the Republican Party. The Republican Party gets too much like deflection even sometimes. And it's all kind of pinned on Trump. I really do consider them very closely aligned. And now Trump is obviously like a driving factor in the corruption, but the Republican Party, they are just as complicit in all of this stuff. And so it's all connected to ego and the desire of Trump to institute corruption and people who will not undermine him. That's what's so crucially different about this administration from the previous. In the previous administration, he had psychos, but some of the psychos who had, some modicum of self-respect and were sometimes, though far too infrequently, willing to push back against Trump. You don't have that at all here. And Ryan's like, I wish that he would rehire Bill Barr, who would sometimes say when things were wrong. Like, dude, there's a reason he hasn't picked another Bill Barr type person. Bill Barr, who was like his attack dog. I mean, it's even crazy that we're kind of picking Bill Barr as like an honest broker when he is far, 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 far from it.
Then you go, holy shit, I've got a great lawyer who I can run this by.
I'm going to run this by and say, is this a good idea?
And you send it to the lawyer, and the lawyer goes, hey, what if you said that's seditious behavior, and we will investigate to the furthest extent of the law?
He's delusional. He's delusional. He thinks that Trump would have the inclination to run this statement by Pam or by any AG. He's delusional. Oh, I didn't know. If Pam Bondi had just been brave enough to tell me this isn't a capital offense and isn't even an offense that I cited at all, then I wouldn't have retweeted they should hang them like George Washington. You have to be deluded to have this kind of take.
What if you said that instead? Would that express the point adequately? And then you go back and forth. Maybe it needs some.
And Rob is nodding. Rob, who just called for political show trials of crimes that couldn't be convicted beyond a reasonable doubt for purposes of embarrassing, and he's nodding like, yes, we need an astute AG who really lays on the line for Trump and really pushes back on him when he's going too far. Do you understand that Rob's public enemy number one is Bill Barr? He says Bill Barr is corrupt. Why is Bill Barr corrupt? Because he didn't follow what Trump wanted, and he stabbed him in the back, and he's a rhino. And now Rob's like, yes, of course, yes. What you're saying makes sense.
Exclamation marks. Maybe you need to make it punchier. Like, I don't like you. There's a back and forth. It's not like you got.
Write with like crayons, he's saying. Maybe put exclamation marks in your memos to make it so that you read it because you're a child, that we need to put exclamation marks in the memos. Otherwise you won't read them from your AG when you're passing the notes and on like the red line on my Truth Social posts that I will definitely run by my fucking Justice Department. As though that should be a job for the DOJ, running fucking operations of PR for Trump. Bondi's purpose is not to be the president's lawyer. It's to enforce the law of the country. And Mullally is saying like, yes, we should definitely make it a prime subject for the AG to be passing on like the public comments, political comments of the president.
Always listen to your lawyer, but I just don't get the sense that she's in the loop.
Your lawyer. Look at this term. Always listen to your lawyer. Have we fallen so far that we're buying this garbage that the Attorney General of the United States is Trump's personal lawyer? It is a profound betrayal to everything Ryan claims to stand for. Is that even putting it in this term? Listen to your lawyer. Get a smart lawyer there to sign off on your public pronouncements on politics.
On this,
no, I think
there's
I think
no
she
way
sucks.
She was advising on this.
I think she sucks for a litany of reasons. For me, the Epstein debacle should have been the last day that she was in office. It seemed evident to me, right, that
they're throwing Bondi under the bus. They're so naive.
Had no clue. She had no clue what had prior been released on Epstein and made these big claims. And then, as always, like most of the time, people in all walks of life, but it's magnified when you're on the public stage like her. The excuses afterwards actually dig your hole deeper. And so when Bondi comes out after that and it's like, oh well, they had these files and they're sitting on my desk and they've deleted it. I know there was stuff there and they've withheld it or they deleted it. It's like, okay, where's that? And now it's like she's dug this impossible hole. She was lying to us at some point, or she's grossly incompetent, and that's
Trump is lying. Trump said this is a Democratic hoax. I don't know if I can do it. I'll do like 5 more minutes of this.
Probably worse. And there's been, who was it the other day that she broke this story that was just like, oh, we found out that when it came to like, who was it? One of the senators or whatever that they had got.
Okay, I can do it. All right, folks. Definitely. Thank you for watching that. I watched maybe 2-3 minutes of it and then another 2-3 minute segment somewhere else. So I knew some of what was being said, but like when you really take it down, I mean, this is one of the dumber commentaries by two blowhards that interpersonally I think are swell, and I'd love to collaborate with them sometime. But really, I mean, this shit is disgraceful, despicable, all the adjectives. And definitely the good guys are the Democrats. Definitely the bad guys are Trump and the Republicans. And the double standard is self-admitted. And both of them are speaking in terms that the DOJ should be like weaponized politically to embarrass Democrats, to be PR for the Trump administration and for Trump himself, as opposed to, I don't know, enforce the law. I'll probably try to do the Andrew Wilson thing. I can't promise it'll be tomorrow because I'll be moving around. But I have to go to bed because I need to get up early. That said, like the stream, sub to the channel if you want 70% chance Viva Frey tomorrow. I'll keep you posted on Twitter. I'll put a little post if it's happening. I don't have a time frame yet, so that's all I can give you. 70% chance Viva Frey. If it'll happen, it's Thanksgiving time, so everything's up in the air. But if you're interested in that stuff, just stay tuned to my Twitter. Follow the channel. I love you guys. You're the best audience there's ever been. Stay beautiful. Stay cool.